Greetings, wrestling fans. This is Jim Fannin, the guy you love to hate, or maybe you just hated my guts, period. I have the pleasure of leading you into the Mid-South Memories podcast. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individuals making the statements, and they do not necessarily reflect those of Nick Maniwa, Mike Ruff, or the BNMVS Podcast Network. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only. The IWA Mid-South shows covered on this podcast contained adult themes. Violence for the sake of violence. Bloodshed for the sake of bloodshed. Explicit language. We're on these shows because if you ain't hardcore, you ain't shit. So that just leaves one thing left to say. Nick Maniwa, start the podcast.
Guys, gals, non-binary pals, we in here, Pro Wrestling's BFF Nick Maniwa, joined by Mike Ruff of RuffFigures.com for another episode of Midsouth Memories. Mike, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm doing particularly well, and as everyone that can read the Apple Podcast titles or Podcatcher or, wherever they find their podcast, they can see that this is TPI 2004 that we're doing here. Obviously, I was at the shows. I was doing sound for the show, so I was playing the music. Some funny stuff occurred during that weekend with the music. Mike, have you ever seen these shows before?
I have. I saw them probably around 04, 05, maybe 05, probably 05. Just with the delay in technology and everything. It was probably 05 before I actually saw them. But yeah, saw them kind of in real time, at least at that era in indie wrestling. It was real time for me. So yeah, definitely. I think this is the moment we've been waiting for, Nick, is the opportunity to do TPI 04. It's kind of the gold standard for what you and I see, the peak of IWA, as far as talent and quality of matches and all that fun stuff, popularity and other people watching, all that stuff. So I know we've been looking forward to doing this one for several months. Talked about it maybe even before we started doing these officially. Was like at some point we would get to this one and it was going to be big for us. So after a brief hiatus, we're back. We're back with a big one. We're back with one that is meaningful to not only you as someone who grew up in it, but meaningful to the indie wrestling community in general, because I think it's universally maybe disputed a little bit, but probably the best group of independent wrestling talent that was ever in a tournament.
Right, absolutely. It was like just a perfect storm of people that were, at the top of the indies back then, and people that were making their way up and are now at the top of wrestling overall today. So this happened in September of 2004, September 17th and 18th at the Lincoln Center in Highland, Indiana. But how we got to the TPI was in 2000, we had an influx of talent that did not participate in the deathmatch arts. People like Chris Hero, like CM Punk, Colt Cabana, Chucky Smooth, etc., etc. So Ian wanted to make a tournament to showcase them and to showcase that IWA Mid-South is not just a slice and dice promotion. So he created the Sweet Science 16 tournament. That was in 2000, the first one. Chris Hero was the winner in 2000 of the first Sweet Science 16. And then the second year of the Sweet Science 16 is infamous because ICP came for the weekend on that show in Charlestown. And Ace Steel was the winner of the 2001 Sweet Science 16. We were going forward with the Sweet Science 16 tournament name until the passing of Ian's friend, Flyboy Rocco Rock, Ted Petty. So originally scheduled to be September of 2002, it later got moved to November. BJ Whitmer won the first ever official TPI tournament. And then the year previous, Danny Daniels, who was the IWA World Champion at the time, went through the whole tournament with the title and won the finals to become the 2003 TPI winner. And in the commentary and stuff like that, Prazak's kind of like, this is TPI, this is Sweet Science, like kind of making it like interchangeable. But I think over the years, people kind of stopped doing that and, didn't really, because like even in the write-up that he did, he has like first TPI / Sweet Science 16 appearance, yada, yada. So.
Which is even funnier considering there wasn't 16 competitors anymore, and I don't think
right.
2003. 2003 was the first with 24.
Right.
Do you know much, Nick, about the decision to rename it the Ted Petty Invitational? So 2 things come to mind for me right off the bat was when I think of Sweet Science, I'm not necessarily thinking of Rocco Rock, with all due respect. Wasn't a super technical wrestler. The other thing is, at the time, other than in, the closer community, who knew Rocco Rock by the name Ted Petty?
Right. Very, very few people knew Rocco Rock as Ted Petty. I think Ted Petty kind of gets painted with a paintbrush of, oh, he just did that, table stuff or whatever. But a lot of people don't realize that, Ted Petty was the Cheetah Kid before he was, in Public Enemy. And, Ian always told stories of seeing him hit moonsaults and do all these dives way before, Muda. And, I don't know about the true statements of that, but I do know that Ted was looked fondly on by his peers. And, obviously everyone saw the Public Enemy run in ECW and WCW, but there was a lot more underneath the surface of Ted Petty when it came to being a professional wrestler than just, going through tables and brawling around with the Nasty Boys. Obviously the jokes have come out. Oh, the Tom Petty Invitational. AIW ran the Todd Pettengill Invitational as like a diss, and I think they ended up getting I think Todd Pettengill was threatening to sue them. So that tournament became the JT Lightning Memorial or Invitational tournament. So
they changed it from Todd Pettengill to JT Lightning?
Yeah.
Huh.
So the show is on IWTV. It is the remastered version of the show. Just some info about what's going on in the world of wrestling at this time. John Bradshaw Layfield, GCW star, was the current WWE Champion of the World after beating Eddie Guerrero. Kenzo Suzaki and Rene Dupree are the WWE SmackDown Tag Team Champions. La Resistance are the WWE Raw Tag Team Champions. Jeff Jarrett, the greatest of all time, the current NWA World Champion, which was the title for NWA TNA at that time. They had not transitioned into their own title yet. And then someone we will see on this show, Samoa Joe, is your current Ring of Honor World Champion. Like I mentioned, this is on IWTV. The remastered version starts off with a graphic and then a montage with voiceovers from some competitors in the tournament. I'm sure I've seen this before, but I had no memory of it, and I was like, wow, that's a really nice touch. Like, you don't see stuff like that, in 2004 indie wrestling. And then there's a traditional music video with just clips of moves and stuff like that from everybody in the tournament. What'd you think about these 2 videos to start off the show, Mike?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. They had some, like you said, the traditional music video move flippy stuff. And they had some voiceover stuff that I thought was really cool. Added a little bit of mystique to the tournament. Gave a little bit of, not credibility, but personality to some of the guys that were not household names.
Right.
And it kind of aligned everybody and put them all within kind of equal quality. So it wasn't like we got AJ, we got Danielson, we got Joe, and then we got a bunch of these either homegrown guys or guys from Wildside or one of the other, areas.
Right.
It just kind of like laid out everybody and put them all in equal standing, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, I think this is cut from the DVD or at least the remastered version, but at the live show, of course, there's going to be an Ian Rotten speech to open the show.
It's
He announced, okay, he announces the 2005 King of Death matches will be held in Tokyo in conjunction with Big Japan Pro Wrestling, and he talks about how IWA stars will be headed to Big Japan for their first tour of Japan, and yada yada yada. Of course, if you know anything about IWA Mid-South, we never held a King of the Death matches in Tokyo, Japan.
Don't let the truth get
The show starts off with Tool Man Tim Tatum interviewing Lacey as the NWA Midwest Women's Champion. She's basically bitching about being injured and having to take on Mercedes Martinez. Mercedes Martinez, has a little promo and saying she's coming for the belt. And non-tournament action of Lacey and Mercedes Martinez for the NWA Midwest IWA Mid-South Women's title starts off the show. Prazak and Daisy Hayes are on the commentary team. Our good friend Joey Eastman is the ring announcer for this weekend. Bryce Remsburg is the referee. And I don't know if you caught it. I'm sure you did. I think I told you about it. But if you look straight back from the hard cam, you can see the concession stand. And there is always a group of wrestlers in the concession stand watching, whatever's happening, because we did not have monitors. We did not have, it's a packed house, especially that first night. So, the wrestlers couldn't just be out hanging around and, doing whatever. So, you can see Brian Danielson and Trick Davis just watching the show in the concession stand. The Prazak mentions IWA Mid-South joining the NWA, so we have rules now. There's countouts, there's DQs. What did you think about this change in the rules for IWA as a fan at the time?
It made it weird.
Right.
IWA, I think, was known for chaotic situations. And even on commentary, I think it may have been either AJ or Punk or both of them kept reinforcing the fact that there were rules now and they couldn't do karate chops or something like that.
Right.
Something very specific that they wouldn't do anyways, but so upset that there were rules, which is funny because AJ is an NWA guy,
right.
TNA, Wildside, all that stuff. He was an NWA guy. The names of the titles and stuff, what was it? NWA Midwest Women's Champion or something like that.
Yeah.
/ IWA Mid-South Women's
Champion.
Yep. It was super awkward. It was hey, we're getting paid to do this, and we got to acknowledge the NWA whenever we can.
Right.
So,
yes, we shared the title. The title was a baby, and we shared custody with Ed Schumann's NWA Midwest. So this match going on, Lacey has a torn MCL that they mentioned on commentary.
That shoot?
I think it was. I think it was. There's lots of limb offense from Mercedes to Lacey, and then finally Lacey passes out in a leg grapevine. From the pain, Mercedes Martinez is your new IWA Mid-South, NWA Midwest Women's Champion. And then after that, we have the introductions of the entrants. Prazak is in the ring, and I said at the time when I was taking my notes, all the entrants come out, and for once in the world of IWA Mid-South, this is the announced lineup. And then during my research, I saw that at one point, Ray Gordy was originally signed to appear in this tournament, and I don't know what happened. I don't know what the issue was. But obviously he was not in the tournament. And then I saw that Samoa Joe was originally supposed to be on a New Japan Pro Wrestling tour, and that got canceled 2 weeks or a week before. So he ended up being slotted into the TPI, which, is crazy to think. Man, Samoa Joe could have not been in this tournament, his only TPI tournament, and he could have missed out had he gone on that New Japan tour. Prazak pretty much says we want a fair tournament. There's no involvement, outside interference, anything in this. If you get involved, then you will be suspended for a year here in IWA Mid-South. Again, that IWA is always so angle heavy and so feud heavy that I think that was a great move to make there in terms of making sure, it's not bullshit, Fannin just bringing out the Fannin family or, whatever needs to happen to prevent all the outside interference. What say you, Mike?
Yeah, and that came up, I think, later in the show with specifically BJ Whitmer and Danny Daniels. Like, They had that angle going, and it felt like that was a stipulation meant for that angle, which it was cool. It was a hot angle, and they played into it later. It's really interesting that, like you said, Joe was perhaps not originally pinned in for the tournament when I think not only at his peak, but he brought a lot to the tournament that wouldn't be there without him. Some of the matches later, we'll talk about it later, but
yes,
he brought a different element that was sweet science, but a little less sweet. And, it was the hard hitting action that Joe brought to every match at the time, would have been missing without him in the tournament. And if Ray Gordy was in there, could have looked a little bit differently.
Right. Absolutely. This is a recap that I believe Dave Prazak typed up for the TPI for everyone announced. Number 1, Austin Aries, the first wrestler invited for the TPI by Ian Rotten after a match against Matt Sydal on April 17th in Lafayette. Went to the finals of the ECWA Super 8 this year, also frequently competing for Ring of Honor. This will be his first Sweet Science 16/TPI appearance for Austin Aries.
And you'll notice, Nick, throughout the lineup, there's 3 guys from the Generation Next stable of guys in Ring of Honor. And this is after they formed that, but really before they broke out as main event guys. Like, they were doing their little, not invasion, but, take of Ring of Honor, and had made a name for themselves everywhere else. And Ring of Honor was, one of the last to the party. But that's kind of what everybody respected most in indie wrestling was the Ring of Honor and what they were doing with guys. And this is really before they were thought of as credible main event guys. Like, they were just now getting matches with the top guys, but weren't really at that level yet.
Right.
So, seeing some of these guys, either like Aries, who was the first invitee to the tournament, or, Shelley, who did fairly well, and Roderick, who had a great match with Joe, like, this is before they were really thought of in the light that they were, maybe a year or so later, and, for the next 20 years, really. But it was just kind of mid-breakout for them. So it's important context to have when we talk about the lineup and how these matches were formed and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Matt Sydal, former IWA Light Heavyweight Champion, he also got invited after that match with Aries in Lafayette. Made his IWA debut in November 2003, quickly established himself winning the IWA Light Heavyweight title in January 2004 and having a Match of the Year contender against AJ Styles during April, also his first TPI appearance. Next up, Spider Nate Webb was invited by Ian Rotten after their first round bout in the 2004 King of the Death matches. Former IWA Light Heavyweight Champion will likely be the only wrestler to compete in both the King of the Death match and TPI during 2004. This will be his third appearance in the tournament. BJ Whitmer, winner of the 2002 TPI, defeated CM Punk in the finals. Former IWA World Champion, fourth TPI appearance. Roderick Strong, he is the trainer at the NWA Florida School, made his IWA debut in April of 2004, made an immediate impact over the April Blood Shower Simply the Best 5 weekend, has made great strides across the independent wrestling scene, his first TPI appearance. Chris Hero, co-trainer at the Chikara Wrestle Factory, winner of the 2000 Sweet Science 16 tournament, defeated Harry Palmer in the finals, former multiple-time IWA heavyweight champion, made it to the finals last year against Alex Shelley and Danny Daniels. This will be his fifth TPI Sweet Science 16 appearance. Petey Williams, current IWA World Champion, and you'll hear me go back and forth between heavyweight and World Champion. We called it, the heavyweight title back then, and then later on in IWA we switched it to the World, so it's the same title. I just call it different things depending on the time. It's not the actual same title. The title that PD has at TPI weekend was destroyed by Chris Hero at TPI 05, which was the original OG title from like 97 when they got it or whatever. So that was the OG title, but then Hero destroyed it like a year later with a heel turn.
The plates were like painted or printed or something, weren't they?
Yeah. They were printed on. Yeah, it wasn't molded. Yep. It was just all a flat plate.
It was like pewter on red by the end of it.
Ian was a big mark for the NWA TV title, so he always wanted, a red title. Number 7, Petey Williams, current IWA champion, defeated BJ Whitmer on 5-8 in Highland, strongly considered for TPI participation last year. This Canadian athlete is a predominant member of the current TNA roster, the captain of Team Canada, first TPI appearance for Petey Williams. The Soul Assassin Rain Man, NWA Wildside-based athlete, made his IWA debut on July 23rd in Lafayette, impressed IWA management with his performance, and this was his first TPI appearance as well. Todd Sexton, trainer at the NWA Wildside School, had a strong first-round match against AJ Styles last year and has been invited to return to TPI competition this year. Chris Sabin, the star of NWA's X Division, appeared for IWA before building his name on TNA pay-per-view, has continued to compete for the company ever since, went out last year to Alex Shelley in the first round, second TPI appearance for Chris Sabin. The American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, this international superstar trained by Shawn Michaels, regularly competes for New Japan Pro Wrestling as well as Ring of Honor. Made his way to IWA in July of 2004, falling to Eric Cannon in his debut. Returned in August with a submission victory over Chris Hero. This will be his first TPI appearance. Alex Shelley, currently featured in TNA as well as Ring of Honor, this baby bear gained a great deal of his early experience in IWA rings, particularly during a series of matches against Jimmy Jacobs. Went to the finals last year against Chris Hero and Danny Daniels. This will be his second TPI. Jimmy Rave, this Georgia-based athlete, has competed in NWA Wildside, Ring of Honor, and CZW rings as of late, while making appearances every so often for IWA as well. Made it to the second round of the past two TPI tournaments, 02 and 03. This will be his third TPI. Hallowicked, star of the first graduating class at the Chikara Wrestle Factory, trained by Reckless Youth and Mike Quackenbush, considered largely to be the best all-around singles wrestler produced by that school. This will be his first TPI. The anarchist Eric Cannon, after making his IWA debut on July 4th, 2003, that is the We Are Family Marathon Wrestling Show, Eric Cannon made his debut on. Went on to have a strong first round match last year against Chris Hero in the TPI. In the time since, has had memorable bouts against the likes of Delirious, Ian Rotten, Samoa Joe, Tracy Smothers, and Hero in rematches. Earned an impressive victory over Bryan Danielson on July 31st. This will be his second TPI. Double C Claudio Casanoli, the current Westside Extreme Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. This member of Swiss Money Holding trained under Chris Hero as well as in clinics with the likes of Dave Taylor, Tony St. Clair, and Skida. Made his IWA debut in July of 2002. This will be his first TPI appearance. Danny Daniels, the winner of the 2003 TPI, defeating Hero and Alex Shelley in the finals as former IWA World Champion, had the longest reign of any World Champion in recent memory. This will be his second TPI. Nigel McGuinness, this British Grappler, debuted in IWA during 2003 with a impressive bouts against the likes of BJ Whitmer, Chris Hero, among others. Went to the second round of last year's tournament, scoring a first-round victory over Brad Bradley. Also competes for HWA, New Breed Wrestling, and Ring of Honor when not appearing for IWA. This will be his second TPI. Lightning Mike Quackenbush, co-trainer at the Chikara Wrestle Factory, mixes pro wrestling with lucha libre and Japanese wrestling influence. Debuted in IWA in the 2001 Sweet Science 16 tournament and made return appearances during each year that followed. This will be his second TPI. Samoa Joe, this international star, is currently undefeated in the IWA singles competition and is the reigning Ring of Honor World Champion. Made his way to IWA in April of 2004, defeating at the time IWA World Champ BJ Whitmer, and scored victories over Eric Cannon, Steve Stone, Chris Hero, and Homicide. This will be his first TPI appearance. Sal Renaro, frequent wrestler for NWA Wildside, made his IWA debut at the 2003 TPI, falling to Jimmy Jacobs in the first round. Returned to IWA ranks during 2004 and has been invited back for the TPI tournament, his second TPI tournament. AJ Styles, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion and TNA X Division Champion, largely regarded as one of the best lighter weight wrestlers in the world today with a dynamic, high-flying repertoire. Debuted in IWA during the 02 TPI tournament, falling to Christopher Daniels in the first round, and what many felt at the time, and I think Ian even mentioned it on the microphone, one of the best matches in IWA history of AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels. He returned in 03, defeating Todd Sexton in the first round, and then lost to Danny Daniels in the second. This will be his third TPI appearance. Super Dragon, the masked wrestler, frequently competes on the California indie scene, appeared for IWA during the 02 TPI weekend, being eliminated by a Steel, and competed in a, I guess, infamous four-way non-tournament match the next night. This will be his second TPI. And last but not least, the former multiple-time IWA World Champion CM Punk, as well as light heavyweight champion, debuted in IWA during 2000, made it to the finals of the 2002 TPI tournament against BJ Whitmer. His resume includes Ring of Honor, Major League Wrestling, TNA, 01, returned to IWA during May of 2004 after a 10-month hiatus. This will be his fourth TPI / Sweet Science 16 appearance. Any names that stand out? Any names that you're like, what the hell? Any comments about any of the entrants here for this TPI tournament?
Yeah, there's a lot of names that stand out and a lot of names that are kind of WTFs. They're either one of the two, right? There's no middle ground here. They're either superstars or they're guys who did not live up to that same level of success. Sorry, Sal Renaro. NWA is great. He's still out there working hard, but never really made it to the promised land like AJ and those guys did. Right. But the thing that I appreciate the most, and like we've talked about it, beat it to death. Ian does such a great job of mixing in the homegrown talent with the big names. So, we got AJ Styles in there. We also got Sal Renaro. We got Spider Nate Webb. We got Rain Man in there. It's not necessarily the same caliber of what people think they are. Danny Daniels, BJ Whitmer, homegrown guys mixed in there, and they all look credible. They're all, like I said earlier, kind of put in that same competitive light. So, maybe guys like Todd Sexton, you could say doesn't belong, but at the time, nobody was thought of in the regard that we think of them now.
Right, and unfortunately for all the competitors in this tournament, you got to have first round losers. It's just the way of life. It's a tournament. Someone has to lose. So.
And that's what people thought Rain Man was there for, and that didn't play out the way that a lot of people thought, which again goes back to Ian's ability to book some different stuff.
Right, you can definitely tell the people that Ian took a liking to, Rain Man, Petey Williams, etc. The first round of this tournament, Matt Sydal versus Sal Renaro. Eddie Kingston joins Prazak for commentary. Like I mentioned just earlier, Sal debuted at the 2003 TPI. He went on to do 4 more shows for us in IWA. Sadly, Sal did not make it out of the first round in 2003. He lost to Jimmy Jacobs. And then Matt Sydal would have 79 matches for us in the IWA Mid-South. Debuted in November of 2003. Former IWA Light Heavyweight Champion. Also held the NWA Midwest X Division title during that time. Spoiler alert, Sydal would go on to win the 2005 TPI the next year, defeating Kevin Steen in the finals. His last IWA match was in 2007 against Ricochet during Ricochet's come-up in wrestling. Kingston predicts Eric Cannon is going to win the tournament on commentary. Matt Sydal wins this match with his moonsault belly to belly from the top in 9:36. Both competitors still active today. Sydal is with AEW and Ring of Honor, and as you mentioned, Sal is an NWA superstar. Any thoughts about this one, Mike?
Yeah, it was a very early 2000s match, both in style of the moves that they were doing, as well as the crowd's reaction to Sal Rinauro.
Dude, the crowd react while I was watching this. Like, you don't get crowds like that anymore. You don't get people jumping up and down. You don't get people high fiving. You don't get people. You know what I mean? Like, I think to be an old man, I think the internet killed wrestling.
It's not cool to be excited about anything.
Right. You got to be, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the moonsault belly to belly is a terrifying move to watch.
Right.
It's essentially not even a Spanish fly, kind of, but off to the side where you're not landing directly on top of somebody.
Yeah.
This takes that to a whole new extreme, and while Matt Sydal is not the heaviest guy on earth, I would imagine another human being landing on top of you from a flipping motion would be painful, potentially dangerous.
Right, absolutely.
As far as I know, he never hurt anybody with it.
I don't think so.
That was like the thing at the time, was him doing that.
Yeah, I don't think he ever hurt anybody. It's like a backflip hug, essentially.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, even with some of the crazy stuff that we see nowadays, you don't see that happen anymore. One of the other things that Sydal did at the time that I really, really liked was that stand on the back moonsault backsplash deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, he'd have his opponent down on all fours, he'd stand on the back, do the moonsault right on top of him. I think, is it Hunter Drake?
Yeah,
does something kind of similar.
He stands on the back for the Code Red.
Yeah, that's right. That, just getting the move started off in that position is very unique. And, like, Sydal's moonsault is beautiful. Yeah. I think it still is.
Yeah.
And it's like, from that position, the impact on top of the back where the guy just kind of lands on his belly from being on all fours is great. And then there's, like, his good buddy, maybe, I don't know, running mate at the time, Delirious, did the Shadows Over Hell deal.
Right.
And that was kind of a similar landing, but it looks super impactful. And nobody does stuff like that, or did stuff like that.
Right, for sure. Yeah, it must have been something in that St. Louis water. Like, you gotta do moves to the back.
Sal Rinauro had some cool stuff too. He did a suplex off the side of the ropes, like not in the corner, but off the side of the ropes. He did like a vertical suplex into like a side effect kind of situation, which like we've seen before, but that was like one of his go-tos, I think.
Yeah, that's Hammerstone's finisher, and Sal Rinauro is just busting it out as a move. Hammerstone's 300 pounds, all muscle, and Sal Rinauro's not that, but I thought that was funny.
He's about 120 all muscle.
Right. Next up, Spider Nate Webb versus Hallow Wicked. Bryan Danielson joins Prazak on commentary. The first TPI for Hallow Wicked. He'd returned to TPI in 2006. He has 12 total matches in IWA. The third TPI for Nate Webb. 188 matches for Nate Webb in IWA history.
What a stud.
Yeah, Danielson is excellent on commentary. Just a perfect wrestling analyst. Just, it is really treating it like a sport and not fucking off, and just I really appreciate it and enjoyed his commentary. Nate Webb mixed it out with the first round. In 8:44 with the Soylent Green 2, it's still people, a reverse DDT driver out of the Power Slam position. Both competitors still active. Both recently appeared for GCW over the summer. What do you have to say about Nate Webb and Hallow Wicked?
I can't say enough about Nate Webb. He's an IWA guy at the time, fit in perfectly with some of these other guys that were thought of in a higher light. Just like he is, for me, Nate Webb is the man. Like, he can do everything.
Everyone loves Nate Webb. If you don't love Nate Webb, you're a piece of shit.
That's right. I'll second that. I don't know the guy at all, but just as a fan, he can do everything well. He can do everything with credibility. He can do everything with enthusiasm. He'll bust his ass, literally, figuratively, in order to get people into it. And I am a huge Nate Webb fan. Kind of echoing what you said about Danielson on commentary, very different for a fellow wrestler to give that degree of effort to commentary on a technical standpoint. And I, too, appreciated that. not the most exciting guy on commentary, but very much an analyst. The two guys, very similar builds, the skinny, lanky kind of type of guy with a lot of, chick horror influence on the Hollow Wicked side and just Nate Webb's usual stuff. The fact that Nate is known for, both the TPI and King of the Deathmatch stuff is very cool too. I think he was the first to do that. Is that true?
Maybe it might have been Ian in 03. I'd have to search it up.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right.
But I mean, there's what, a handful, maybe 10 total that.
It got easier to do both later on. In the IWA run, I'd say after like 2008.
Yeah. Murdoch, Bentley, and
yep. It wasn't
more now than they were back in the day. Back in the day, it was you are a deathmatch guy or you're a technical wrestler. Nowadays, you have to do all of it. Look at a guy like Ringo Loco, who's excellent at both. Maybe not deathmatch, but he can definitely do some shit.
Right. Yep. There wasn't so many hybrids back in the day. JC Bailey's probably one of them that did both. I know Tank. I think in 05. I think he did TPI, King of the Death, and the Strong Style tournament, which was, a big like feather in his cap type situation.
That's a big fucker too.
Right, that's a big hat, right. Rain Man and Chris Sabin up next. As we mentioned, Rain Man debuted in July of 04. He defeated Hollow Wicked at Tap Out City in Lafayette. Funny thing about Tap Out City is the show had no name. It was just like Live Pro Wrestling in Lafayette. And then more than like half the matches in a submission victory. So someone was like, what do we call it? And I forget who it was. It was like, call it Tap Out City because everyone used a submission for the finish. Rain Man was later known as Corey Chavis in the Dark City Fight Club with John Davis. He would have 8 total IWA matches in he would have 8 total matches in IWA Mid-South. Easy for me to say. He retired from wrestling in 2019. Chris Sabin's been around IWA since 2003. He last appeared for us in December of 05. Sabin's still active. Both he and Alex Shelley are 2 of the hottest free agents in the wrestling world today. Pump Handle Bomb to put Sabin away in 10 minutes for Rain Man to advance, which a lot of people saw as an upset.
Yeah, I really liked the Rain Man's inclusion and his success in the tournament. I thought it was very unexpected, and especially against a guy like Chris Sabin, who was getting TV time with NWA TNA and was established everywhere already, was great. And I think for me, at least, this is kind of like peak Chris Sabin. Like, he went on to do a lot more than he had at this point, but as far as like his physicality, his skill set, his momentum, like, he was pretty hot right now. So to have a guy like Rain Man, who's relatively unknown for the masses, come in and beat Chris Sabin was huge, I thought. And it gave the tournament like sporting credibility. Like, it wasn't basically, for me, it told the audience what you think is true is not necessarily true.
Right. The predictable is not predictable any longer.
Right. Rain Man's here to lose in the first round, right? Is kind of the setup.
Right.
To have him not is like, oh shit, that means that anybody could win at any given match. And that is something that I think tournaments are missing now, especially some of the deathmatch ones. Like, they are set up for guys to make it to the finals, and you can see it. It's very calculated, and it takes some of the enjoyment out of it, at least for me as a fan. So, I thought, again, I hate to, blow the Ian horn, but I thought he was pretty good at doing that throughout his, running his promotions and his tournaments.
Yeah. I think what helped IWA was, like Mid-American Wrestling would do the Hardcore Cup in Milwaukee, and it would only be 8 guys. And, Ian's running King of the Death matches, and it's 24 or it's 16. So, we have, there's more opportunity to be had when there's so many more people, in the tournament. And, you don't have to just hit, you don't have to just get, 8 heavy hitters and 8, death match, gods to be in it. You can, throw a bone to, whoever you need.
And it's not about the best guys winning any given match. You know,
Right.
we see it later in the tournament too. Like guys that had been through a couple harder matches early in the tournament are not on the winning end, and it makes it more realistic for sure. You know, you mentioned having more guys in there, and it's true with 24 guys, you can have someone like Rain Man win and still get to the end result that you want. Like if your target is these three guys in the finals, you can still get there with some upsets along the way. It doesn't have to be Chris Sabin against AJ in the next round and then AJ against Joe in the next round. Like you can mix it up and you can have different guys be successful, and it doesn't make anyone look bad. Like you think Chris Sabin's getting less bookings because he lost to Rain Man in an important tournament? Hell no.
I mean, he's still feeling the effects to this day.
That's right.
I just saw a thing, supposedly him and Alex Shelley are debuting on the NXT episode, the first show on the CW network. So that's the rumor as of 9/12/2024. So
are they with TNA, whatever we call it? TNA, right?
With NXT.
But they're not signed with TNA.
They're not signed anywhere. They're totally free agents as of right now.
How is that possible?
Right.
What the fuck?
Up next, CM Punk versus Austin Aries. Punk made his IWA debut in 2000. His second TPI was previously in the 2000 and 2001 Sweet Science 16. He was actually at the 2003 TPI, but did not appear on the show. He was just there hanging out. Him and Ian had a falling out at one point, and this was during that hiatus. Punk would go on to have 103 matches in IWA Mid-South, the last one in 2005 when he signed to a WWE contract. Aries debuted in January 2003, had 18 matches in IWA Mid-South. I always heard that the Aries and Joe match at the 2004 Revolution Strong Style tournament in November is what helped solidify the decision for Aries to beat Joe for the Ring of Honor World title in December, since it was their only ever one-on-one match up to that point. I don't know if that's true or not.
I think you can read between the lines on that, Nick, but because we know, Gabe watched other stuff.
Right.
And that's what got some of these guys extra spots in Ring of Honor, was that they were proven on other smaller, maybe indies.
Seeing their I was there live for the Strong Style tournament. They beat the shit out of each other, and then they beat the shit out of each other in December for the Ring of Honor title. Punk wins the match with the inverted Pepsi plunge in 16:46.
Yeah, in the match of the two most well-liked guys in the first round, we have what I consider to be the peak of independent wrestling, CM Punk, versus the mid-breakout Austin Aries. At this point, 2004, Punk was established. He was well on his way to becoming much more than he was at the time, and I think everybody knew that. I mean, everybody knew that in 2002, that he was, quite exceptional and going to do amazing things. It was just a matter of time getting enough, reps under his belt. But this match, I think they had mentioned on commentary, I think Dave mentioned that it was a rematch from an ROH show like a week ago. So the seeds were already planted. They had a great match. One thing that stood out the most to me in this match was you'll see it later in the show and throughout the weekend, the overuse of the Shining Wizard and all of its many variants.
Yes.
It essentially was the 2004 version of what the Destroyer is in 2024. Like, it's in almost every match, from every direction, any setup. It's always there, whether it's a knee, a foot, an elbow. Like,
that was the hot move at the time.
God, so overused. And it was such a cool move, and then it just got beat to shit. The same way the Destroyer was. Anyways, so sorry to be an old man and go off on a tangent, but I think Punk uses it here in this match, hurts his knee. I think he did it to the ring post, and that's what hurt the knee, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
He had Aries set up around the ring post and went for a Shining Wizard and whacked his knee on the ring post, and then, sold the knee the rest of the match. Great sell on the knee too. Punk's really good at that. He's, for as credible as an offensive wrestler he is, his selling and ability to look like he's getting his ass whooped is exceptional. Big fan. Like you said, inverted Pepsi plunge for the 3 count, another move that you wouldn't see nowadays because it's terrifying.
Right.
At least on a wide scale. It's weird because like we watched this stuff and it was regular and we're like, yeah, that was cool. And as desensitized to violence as we are right now with everything we've seen since then, if we see that now, it's terrifying.
Right. Yeah, I was watching this back in the living room, and me and Jess were watching it, and Nick Jr. was there playing on his tablet, and I was like, "Hey man, watch this move," and he's like, "What's he doing? A superplex? A Hurricane Rana? What's he doing? What's he doing? What's he? Oh!
Oh my god!"
I was like, "Yeah, you wasn't expecting that one, was you?"
Yeah, it's crazy to think that was just normal for us, and now we see people
like him, Punk having to jump backwards.
Yeah.
And land far enough out for. I mean, Aries is 4'3", but still, you gotta land. You gotta land far enough where you're not tangled up in the ropes.
Like, let's count how many ways that should and could go badly.
Right.
Like, you could drop him on his face, drop him on top of his head. You could fuck up your knee. You could have his legs tied up in the rope turnbuckle. Any of that stuff. Like, there's so many opportunities for that to go badly that when it does not, it's amazing. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a fun match. I like the clash of styles, not clash of styles, but clash of eras. Excuse me.
Right.
Punk is kind of like maybe second generation big indie star, and Aries would be that next generation. Generation next. Shit. But yeah, I mean, it's not a passing of the guard, but it's a rare opportunity in time where established guy gets to meet guy who's about to establish it within the next year and be the next hot guy, where Punk was in 2002-ish.
Right. Yeah, I think at this point Ian didn't really have times for stuff, or because it seems like like Punk and Aries is 1646. Yeah. And then there's some that are like super long, and it's like, oh boy, like we're gonna be here all night, which we were, but.
And we're going to talk about it much later in this show, but my favorite match of the entire tournament is the shortest one. And it's not because I don't like a long match. Right. It's because of the story that's told in that match is like, fuck me.
Yeah, I agree. Danny Daniels versus Todd Sexton. Coming off winning the TPI 2003, Danny Daniels had 125 matches during his IWA career. His regular run started in September of 2002, had one appearance for us in December of 2001, had a non-tournament match with Tarek the Great at the inaugural TPI tournament. Last IWA match was July 2005. No longer active in ring. He stopped wrestling around 2013, but he's still running AAW in the Chicagoland area. Todd Sexton had 9 appearances in IWA rings. Made his debut in the 2003 TPI tournament. Was the trainer at the NWA Wildside School, still somewhat active in the Georgia indie scene. Danny Daniels wins the match with the Rubik's Cube in 10:56. After the match, Whitmer jumps Daniels with an exploder into the crowd. He absolutely destroyed a plastic chair. I'm sure Ian loved that one.
Yeah,
I was like looking at the chair. I was like, "Oh, you can maybe fix that." And then, as you got a clearer shot of the chair, I was like, "No, that chair's fucked, man."
There was some later on with the big one piece, not the folding ones, but the gigantic slippy plastic chairs. I think it was in the finals, and a couple of them got fucked. And I was like, "Oh, Ian's on commentary too," and I know he's kind of losing it.
Right? How would he got to yell at the fucking finalists?
This match, we get the first rendition of "Turn Me On, Mr. Deadman," which is a very 2003-4 song. Yes. We talked about it a little bit off the air. It's like the perfect song for that era. It's all like, and
if you noticed, my CD skipped.
At the beginning, and you got a shout out from Prazak on
it. that only happened because Danny Daniels wrestled on more shows than everyone else. So if you're out there listening, kids, the mix CD that I made with everyone's theme on it, his got the most use. So it was skipping, and there was nothing I could do.
Contrary
I don't know.
to
I think the next night I had a different CD. But like back in those days, like once I had your music on a CD, I didn't have like multiple, multiples of it. So, sorry, Danny Daniels, for that.
The other thing that I wanted to lay out on Danny Daniels, if Danny Daniels had an Elite wrestling action figure,
Yes.
it would have 2 sets of interchangeable hands that would be exactly the same. Because that's the only direction that his hands go are the little gun hands.
Right.
So, at
Come
the
on,
intro,
baby.
coming out the curtain, come on, baby, midway through the match, same thing, end of the match, same thing. So he would have 2 identical interchangeable hands. I mentioned coming out the curtain. The curtain is very significant for me in a nostalgia standpoint. I think in one of our first shows we mentioned like the K5 logo or the IWA logo in the bottom corner of the screen and how like nostalgic that was for us. The red and blue like half and half curtain. As soon as I saw that, it like took me right back to the first time I watched some of these shows, and I was like, oh, that curtain. Like so many good memories were had starting from that curtain, and like just at the initial camera view of the curtain and then someone coming out, just it brought back so many good memories of being a child and enjoying independent wrestling.
Right, totally. I agree with that. No idea where that curtain is now. It's probably been shipped away somewhere or something or other.
Imagine the value right now of that curtain signed by all 24
Right.
TPI 2004 combatants. Like that would be a $1,000 piece of memorabilia.
Right, absolutely. Next up, we have an IWA Light Heavyweight title ladder match. Jimmy Jacobs and Delirious were pulled from the TPI tournament to be in this ladder match. There's promos from each. Obviously, Delirious doesn't say much. Jimmy has moved away from the Husk gimmick and the furry boots, but still using the touch by Stan Bush.
Ooh.
There was a double pin the month previous, leading us to a title match here, a ladder match here. Jimmy Jacobs went on to have 183 matches in his IWA career. Actually performed on the last, as of right now, IWA Mid-South show in May 2022. He debuted in November of 2002, still active in wrestling these days with Ring of Honor and AEW. Delirious has 85 matches in his IWA career, last one in May of 2008. His first one against Jamie Cox in October 2003.
Jamie who?
Jamie Cox, 3 X's.
Ooh.
Delirious also still active in the world of wrestling. Just recently announced that he's having a child, so congratulations to him if he's ever to hear this. Just some notes I had. Disgusting ladder throw from Jimmy to Delirious on the floor. Delirious mask gets ripped. He's bleeding profusely. Jimmy almost dies from the ladder shooting out from under him. He hits a back senton off the top. Threw Delirious on the table. Jimmy wins the belt in the ring. He hangs on the belt. Delirious drop kicks the ladder out from under him, and then Jimmy undoes the belt and falls with the belt. So 1556, Jimmy Jacobs wins the IWA Light Heavyweight title. Any thoughts about this one?
Just quickly, cool spots throughout. The ladder man spot was cool, where basically you are a walking, talking ladder.
Yes.
You have the ladder over you as a shield, and you're running into stuff with it. Very cool. Delirious tapes Jimmy Jacobs to the ropes at one point very poorly, but Jimmy sells it like a champ. And then, of course, Jimmy, in true Jimmy Jacobs fashion, rips through the tape with his spike, the Kevin Sullivan spike.
Yes.
Very cool. Like you said, he almost dies falling off of a ladder, which was disgusting.
And Tommy was holding it, but I guess he wasn't holding it. I guess he wasn't holding it tight enough, and he kind of pushed off instead of just jumping off of it.
It looks
there's a difference between pushing off and then just falling. He didn't just fall; he pushed off.
Yeah. And then he went back up and did it successfully, but fuck, after that first one, man.
Right.
Good stuff. It was fun traditional Jimmy Jacobs chicanery and Delirious with a dueling spike, and very cool. Very cool. They're, like you said, Delirious gets the mask ripped open. He's bleeding all over the place. And we talked about this a little bit. There are I don't want to say public, but there are photos of, like, promo photos of Delirious bleeding with a ripped mask that I have, like, ingrained in my very distant memory. I know they're out there. I remember seeing them, and for years and years and years, that was like the Delirious picture. Mm-hmm. If anybody has those, send them in.
Right.
I want to see him again.
And we need to see him again.
Yeah.
Next up, Mike Quackenbush and Chris Hero in a first-round match. The Chikara students of the Wild Cards, Eddie Kingston, Blackjack Marciano, Larry Sweeney, Team Fist of Icarus, and Greg Nakuma and Jigsaw are ringside, kind of Japanese young boy style.
With their matching Chikara t-shirts, too.
Yes. Chris Hero was headed to Japan for his first tour the next day. He hasn't won a match in obviously we didn't know about that until after the match, so it wasn't a spoiler of what to happen. There was some like BS thing of like, if Hero wins this match, then we'll send Mike Quackenbush in his spot, or it was just some bullshit ass whatever. Hero hasn't won a match in the Lincoln Center since November of 2003. That was like the running story of Chris Hero in Highland. He can't win a match in Highland. Hero would go on to have 290 matches for us in his IWA career. Made his debut in July 2000, won the 2000 Sweet Science 16, which was the predecessor of the TPI tournament, defeating Harry Palmer in the finals. 4-time IWA World Champion, was in 9 TPIs and 2 Sweet Science.
He's only a 4-time champion?
Only a 4-time champion.
Oh.
Quack had 26 matches in his IWA career, went on to win the IWA World and Light Heavyweight title in his time, won the 2007 TPI tournament after that scary incident with his head. Made his IWA debut in the first round of the 2001 Sweet Science 16, was in 4 TPIs and 1 Sweet Science. Quack wins with an alligator clutch in 1635. The wild cards are disgusted as Hero shakes hands with Quack after the match. What do you have to say about this Chikara showcase?
Did you just say that he had 26 matches in IWA?
Yes, Quack did.
And he was in how many?
He was in 4 TPIs and 1 Sweet Science.
So 5 tournaments total.
Yeah, 5 tournaments total,
and a former world champion and a former light heavyweight champion in 26 matches.
Yeah, he there was like a 4-way or something. It was like him. It was like Quack, Eddie Kingston, Hero, and Claudio, or Hero and Chuck Taylor, not Claudio. And Chuck Taylor was the light heavyweight champion, and Kingston was the heavyweight champion, and Quack won the match, so that's how he won.
That's amazing that he could have that many accolades in 26 matches in one company.
Right, absolutely.
What a talent he is. Anyways, yeah, like you said, I think the story here was pushing the Highland curse for Hero. Very technical match. There was a lot of talk about Hero's aggression or lack of aggression, and it's all story.
Right, absolutely. Next up, AJ Styles, Jimmy Rave. AJ has 3 TPI appearances, 24 matches in his IWA career. Made his debut in the 2002 TPI tournament, losing to Chris Daniels, former IWA World Champion. He wins it a month after this show. 22 matches from 2002 to 2004, and then 2 matches during a weekend in 2007 where he wrestled Joker and Tiger Mask 4. You're like, what the hell? Yeah, Tiger Mask 4. He was supposed to win, or he was supposed to defend his TPI win in 2005, and unfortunately came down with strep throat. And at the time, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I'm sure he has strep throat. I'm sure Ian owes him money. I'm sure fucking blah, blah, blah. But looking it up, I actually found a note from like an old like wrestling news site, and it was like AJ Styles returning to action after strep throat took him out the last 2 weekends. So maybe it was a true thing. Jimmy Rave has 3 TPI appearances, 10 total appearances in IWA Mid-South. Little known fact, I actually watched his demo tape that he sent Ian to get booked. And I was like, this guy rules. You should book him. And he debuted at the 2002 TPI tournament. And then he spammed crossfaces all weekend. At least in my eyes as a 14-year-old. His demo tape was all like the cool moves that he did. And then he was just like submission based when he came in. I was upset about that. TPO for his last IWA appearance. Unfortunately, Jimmy Rave has since passed away a few years ago. So, sending love to his family and his fans. AJ wins with a submission. It's almost like a kneeling Moodalock in 12:45. Anything about this one?
No, I don't think so. Good chance to mention the sadness of Jimmy Rave's passing and the unfortunate end of his life, but he was a fun wrestler earlier in his career, and I think a lot of people saw him as one of the next up and coming guys, and never really broke out. He had that weird run in Ring of Honor with Prince Nana that was before he was dancing and entertaining. But he wore like the whole cloak thing, and he was like the embassy's, I don't know, something. And it never really went anywhere and kind of stalled out for the embassy thing stalled out for the next 20 years. And then finally came back with Strength and Swerve. So, sorry, Jimmy Rave. But I always enjoyed watching him. I thought he was a fun talent and fit in the time pretty well. And he was everywhere, CZW, TNA, Ring of Honor, IWA, pretty much anywhere there where wrestling was done, Jimmy Rave was there and doing it well. So we miss you, Jimmy. I never got to make a figure of Jimmy Rave, which was always sad to me because it's something that I always wanted to do. I think Jimmy Rave and AJ always had good chemistry in the matches that I saw too. I think they overlapped a lot, and maybe a little bit of mentorship from AJ to Jimmy Rave early in their careers, and I think that helped Jimmy kind of break through in some cases, but never really fully got to the level that I think people hoped he would. Anyways, good match. AJ finding another way to win. You'll find that he will do that a few different ways throughout the tournament, which is cool. Punk is on commentary. It's standard Punk commentary, whether it's for you or not. Good for him. I think move on, and AJ moves to the next round.
Yeah, and if we don't have much to say about any of these matches, it's not because they're bad matches or anything of that nature. Damn near every match on the show in the TPI tournament is, good to great to incredible. So, we can only say it was a great match. It was a great match. It was a great match so many times before it gets, boring. So, don't feel like our thoughts or lack thereof reflects this tournament, because it is absolutely fantastic. And if you've never watched it, if you haven't watched it since it happened, you definitely owe yourself a rewatch, in my opinion. Next up, Samoa Joe versus Roderick Strong. Roddy has 2 TPI appearances, this one and the 2006 edition. 33 matches in IWA Mid-South overall. First in April of 2004, last in January of 2009. Still active for AEW. One of the most popular wrestlers on the roster for AEW. Joe has 23 appearances in IWA Mid-South. This is his only TPI appearance. Didn't lose a single match during his IWA career. Has 2 double countouts, and he lost in 2 multi-man matches. He's still active for AEW. Never lost a singles match during that whole time. Just the note I have, Roddy side backbreakers Joe through a rental chair.
Oh, yep.
People lost their shit at a big boot falsy for Roddy at the end of the match. People were like, this is it, he's beating them. And then, Joe kicks out. Joe wins 14-20 with the Muscle Buster.
Yeah, great match. And just in general, IWA fans were super into Joe. Like, in every appearance that he had, they loved him. He fit the mold so well.
Right. It's crazy that he never came around until he was like Ring of Honor's guy. You know what I mean?
It was
You would,
super established already.
yeah, you would
Yeah,
think Ian would have, brought him in earlier, but sometimes it's
it doesn't work out.
if you don't see people, you don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, look at a guy like Christopher Daniels. As much as he was around in indie wrestling forever, and IWA was around forever, he only had a handful of appearances too. It just
Right.
they never really crossed paths. Frank Kazarian, another one that we've talked about in the past, like surprising that he wasn't there at some point.
Right. It's those California plane tickets, brother.
That's it. If you're not kidding. Yeah, I mean, this match was one of my favorites of the entire tournament. Just a brutal, hard hitting, classic Joe and Roderick Strong match. For me, it's my favorite version of Roderick Strong throughout his entire career, which may not be a popular opinion because he got significantly better as the years went on. But just what I loved about him was all here. A little bit chubby, had a little goatee with the sideburns, had the long, awkward tights that had his entire full government name on both legs. Joe is in his prime shape. He is not fat. He is thick as a motherfucker, and he looks fantastic with his funny trunks. I mean, that's the Joe that I envision.
All these guys. Like when I think of them, this is how I see them: Chris Sabin,
Yep.
Joe, Nigel, like Claudio, like all these guys. The first image that pops in my head when they say their name is, the look they have at this show, essentially.
Yeah. If I'm drawing trading cards, I'm drawing these versions of them. Just that was the version of them that I enjoyed the most.
Right.
This match for me did a lot in establishing Roderick Strong as like credible contender, and I think the fans' reaction agreed with that, in that they could see him win at any given point. Like that big false finish at the end was huge, and it kind of felt like, especially after the Rain Man win, that he could beat Joe.
Right. It's
and that goes back to the booking style and strategy too. Like if you do that earlier in the show, the fans are going to feel that way later in the show. Like, shit, if Rain Man can beat Chris Sabin, then Roderick Strong can beat Joe in a quick finish in a brutal match.
Right, for sure. Nigel McGuinness, Claudio Castagnoli, the next match. Nigel has 3 TPI appearances, 38 matches overall in his IWA career. Debuted in March of 2003. His last match for us was night 2 of the 2007 TPI tournament. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but they just signed Nigel McGuinness versus Bryan Danielson for Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium coming up in 2 weeks. It was a big thing.
Back to full time, or is it just a
one-off? I'm not sure.
If he gets him off, never mind. That's going to be a great match.
Claudio has 5 TPI appearances, 60 total IWA matches. His last appearance was in the finals of the 2008 TPI. And in all actuality, he probably should have won that one. Just for his time. The 2008 TPI, it was him, Sami Callihan, and Drake Younger in the finals.
Okay.
Debuted in September of 2002. The original date for the 2002 TPI was September of 2002. Unfortunately, we had a thing with like some, we had to put in emergency exits or something. I forget what it was, but we couldn't run shows in the building. So Claudio like actually wrestled in like the parking lot of the IWA Clarksville building, and he wrestled Mark Wolf and he wrestled Chris Hero, and he had already bought his flight from, overseas to come over for the 2002 TPI, and then unfortunately it didn't happen, so he just wrestled on the show that we had in its place. The only note I have for this match is Claudio had some great hair before he started losing it, which is something I could say about myself as well.
You only get a certain amount of hair, like karma, throughout your life, and if you use it all in one, at the beginning of your life, you're out.
You're just
depleted.
You're just screwed. Yeah, Nigel wins.
Look at Todd Morton.
Right. I know, he has a
Beautiful,
sweet mullet.
beautiful mullet. And within 10 years,
Yeah.
down to stubs.
Nothing. Chrome dome.
Chrome dome. Yeah, yeah. Claudio with the hair and the sideburns and the suit and the money sign shirt. I'm a big fan. Plus the music with like the royal entrance and then it kicks into Peter Gabriel. What a banger. What a banger. And then just like his strut out. Oh man. Yeah, like
just that uppity asshole.
Yep.
As soon as he hits the curtain.
Give me that on TV.
Right.
With oh man.
Nigel wins 1330 for that one. Next up, Bryan Danielson, Alex Shelley. Alex Shelley has 3 TPI appearances. He was a finalist in 2003. 60 overall matches in IWA. Debuted in January 03. Last show was TPI Night 2 the next year. At one point, we did have a Jimmy Jacobs, Alex Shelley match booked like in 2020 or 2021 or maybe 2019. Unfortunately, it didn't come to happen. So Bryan has 2 TPI appearances this year and in 2005. 11 appearances overall. Debuted in July of 04. Last show was in December of 05 in a random victory over Jigsaw. Bryan wins with a backslide after reversing the Border City stretch in 14:43. Any thoughts about this one?
Nah, just, Danielson being the professional that he is, finding a way to win when it looks like Shelley was going to take it. Strong showing both ways.
Another great match.
Yeah, a great match. The fact that I have nothing to say about it doesn't mean that it was of bad quality. It was just, it's Alex Shelley, it's Bryan Danielson. You expect it to be great, and it is. So what else can you say?
And I was telling Jess this, right now, people are like, Bryan Danielson's the best in the world. He's the best to ever do it. One of the greatest of all time. And people, and people were saying that back then.
Yep.
And he was only like 5 or 6 years in.
Yep. I have that in my notes too. Like, he was at his prime in 2004. Guess what? He's still in his prime in 2024. Right. This motherfucker has not gotten any better, any worse. He is fantastic, always has been. Yeah, he was great in 2002. Yep.
Right. The only thing he has now is a lot more money than he had.
That's right. But no less motivation to be good, right?
Right. Yeah, we've
seen that before. We've seen guys get paid and be like, fuck this, I don't got to do this anymore.
People are going to study him and study his career because, just one of the greatest.
It's amazing that someone with such, we'll say, humble beginnings, what a cliche, could be as great as he is he wasn't Hulk Hogan. Like, he didn't have 24-inch pythons. He didn't, he's a person.
Right, absolutely.
For me, he's very similar to Chris Hero in that I compare them to the NFL quarterback Peyton Manning. Like, no physical gifts beyond an average person, but an amazing brain and will to learn, and just amazing. Like, that was one of his criticisms early on, was that he was boring and he was small, right? But guess what? He's still better than everyone else.
Right, totally.
And I'm not even, this is coming from someone who,
you're not a super fan, or
exactly.
You're not right.
Exactly. But he is amazing. He's the best independent wrestler that there's ever been, maybe other than Christopher Daniels, for me. Right. It's just, he's the GOAT.
Right. I agree with that.
Too.
Right.
He has a goat face.
Next up, Eric Cannon, Super Dragon. Dragon has 2 TPI appearances. He was in the 2002 TPI. 17 appearances in the IWA Mid-South total. Super Dragon is kind of a antisocial guy. And in 2002, people thought he was like an asshole when he was just like not a social guy. So it took like 2 years for him to come back. And, he was starting to kind of blow up. And
that's stupid.
Right. IWA Mid-South, say whatever you want, but it was like, we were like a close-knit, like,
you gotta be family.
Everybody got along, everybody's family, type stuff, as cliche as it is, but, people felt like, oh man, this guy's an asshole, but, some people are introverted, some people are extroverted, you don't know until, you meet them. Like I said, Dragon has 17 appearances in IWA. He had a Jersey All-Pro Wrestling show the next night to explain why he wasn't in a non-tournament match. Eric Cannon has
Or
5. What's that?
Or just because he was an asshole and didn't want to talk to people.
Right. Eric Cannon has 5 TPI appearances and 91 appearances in IWA Mid-South overall. His last show was the 2017 TPI weekend. Cannon would go on to win the Chikara Tag World Grand Prix in 2005 and the Chikara Young Lions Cup in 2006. Cannon wins with backdrop drivers and a Glimmering Warlock in 1345. Anything about this one?
I really like Eric Cannon. Just as a footnote, I was always a big fan of Eric Cannon.
He's great, man.
He was one of the first people that I ever did a figure for too, and like he wanted it, and like sent me like DVDs and T-shirts and shit for it. And
he's the perfect little like asshole dickhead. Like I don't even know how to like just his face, and he's like fuck you. He's like a perfect like little kid, fucking like fuck you,
he's
man.
Like that little. Yeah, he's like that bully that's smaller than you, and you should really be able to fuck up, but you're kind of afraid of him because you don't really know if he can fuck you up, and you don't really want to test it. He's the perfect counter to Chris Hero. Chris Hero is tall, gangly, has the long hair. He's a relatively good-looking dude. Eric Cannon is short, kind of chubby, bald, little redhead. Nasty, just like he will bite your ankles. Like he's, I'm a big fan of Eric Cannon, always have been. His trash bag outfit makes me smile. He's gotten shit on so many times for that, and I'm a little disappointed he still doesn't wear it. Even like on commentary, there was an individual that was talking about, how chubby he is and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, that's part of his shtick is just being that guy you just don't want to like.
And like, he wasn't even that chubby. He had a little baby fat. Exactly. If I could be in Eric Cannon shape then now, I'd be thrilled.
Walking around in a Speedo, my friend.
I'd find the fucking pleather fucking tank top and wear it around.
I mean, if you're 6'4" and you have his width, maybe it looks different. But as 5'8", maybe on a generous day, Eric Cannon, maybe it changes your perception. Anyways. Sorry, Eric Cannon. I think you're wonderful. What a great wrestler. Super Dragon, the California guy, not a huge fan of, never really was. He does things well, we'll say that. But he, there was a rocket shoved up his ass and everybody loved him for 6 months to a year. Maybe more. Maybe that's not enough. For a short but significant amount of time. And it was really before PWG caught fire, like right around that same era. Like people loved Super Dragon. Like he was Jesus to some people. And like he was kind of all over the place too. He did some CZW. He did, all the major indie stops. And like he was a credible guy and he was around for a long time. And I think he even did some stuff with APW up here in the Bay Area in 2000, I think, like early on. Where Christopher Daniels kind of cut his teeth as an indie wrestler too. Anyways, it's a fun match. Two guys that surprisingly have a similar style, where they're just kind of, going to elbow you, forearm you, punch you, kick you, slap you, like that whole thing. And it's a fun match. Two guys, unfortunately, that are forgotten in the landscape today. Like Cannon's out there busting his ass still, as far as I know. And not getting love for it because he kind of sticks to his home area, I think, probably. But just a great professional wrestler, a guy who I think influenced a lot more people than people realize. Yeah, and a guy who I would consider a legend in maybe not only indie wrestling, but in wrestling in general. And he's responsible for Darren Corbin, who I love. So, right, that's his guy, right?
Yeah. He basically has Minnesota wrestling on his back nowadays with First Wrestling. They just had their Mall of America show again this year. So,
I mean, someone had to take over from the lights of, Vern Gagne and Rick Rude. So I'm glad Eric Cannon can continue that tradition.
Right. Absolutely. And then we finally get to the main event for night one, Mike Ruff.
Oof.
The IWA heavyweight title match, as Petey Williams has decided to defend the title throughout the tournament. Punk did it in 2002. Danny Daniels did it in 2003. And Petey Williams keeping the tradition here as he takes on BJ Whitmer with our good friend Jim Fannin in this IWA heavyweight title match. Petey has 33 matches overall, only TPI appearance, debuted in November of 03. BJ, the winner of the first ever TPI in 02, did 3 TPI totals, 4 Revolution Strong Style tournaments, won the 2003 edition, and a former IWA light heavyweight and heavyweight champion. People were big on Petey Williams at the time, and he was able to beat old BJ Whitmer in 12:58. Anything about this one?
BJ Whitmer is a great wrestler. Jim Fannin is a fun character to watch. He goes on for a prolonged period of time drawing with a ringside fan.
Dude, I forgot that happened.
He's gonna fight him. He invites him into the ring.
I forgot that happened. And it's probably damn near 1 o'clock in the morning at this point. During the live show, and I forgot that happened, and I was like, oh my god, what is going on? And then it was edited off the tape, but there's an incident the next night after the match with BJ and Fannin and a fan, and it was just crazy.
Jim Fannin is a friend of the show, and I think he's wonderful, but his ability to draw fans into a potentially hostile situation is second to none. It's hilarious. It's so funny. And as a fan and someone who doesn't know him personally, I'm not really buying it. It may be a complete fabrication and he's really going to fight this guy because that's kind of believable with his acting, but very unappreciated in that regard. The guy was, they were ready to go, and I feel like the guy was tough guying him in the beginning, the fan, and then Jim kind of put him on notice, and then the fan was like, oh yeah, ha 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 ha, and Jim's like, no, get in the ring, I'm gonna whoop your ass.
Right.
Turn the tables on him, and it was super unexpected. Good work, Jim. And then, the other thing was, Jim kind of coaxing Danny Daniels into the ring to get him suspended.
Right.
I think at one point Danny Daniels came to ringside, right? And Jim is trying to get him to jump in.
Come on. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, it's stuff like that is such a lost art now. And you don't, especially in independent wrestling, you don't see very many heel managers, especially men.
Right.
Because they don't want to pay them. I think that's probably the primary reason is, companies are not going to fly in Jim Fannin to work ringside. But the amount of value that someone like that adds to the show is crazy. And you're telling me now that guy in the second row that's talking shit and flipping birds and ready to fight doesn't remember that now? For sure, 20 years later, he still remembers.
That guy a few years ago, tweeted at me and was like, hey, I was the guy Fannin screamed at. I think he follows me on Twitter, so he might listen to this.
It makes a difference, dude. It really does. That's the fan that you want, is the one that's brought into the show. And even if he hates Jim Fannin as a shoot because he thought he was about to fight him, he's never going to forget that.
Right.
What a talent. The match itself is good. Again, not too much to say about it. This was kind of a day when we talked about it before. The Canadian Destroyer was special. No one was doing it but Petey Williams, and that was his thing. That's why he got his paycheck, was so he could come in and do a Canadian Destroyer. And then again, Shining Wizard was the 2004 version of that, where I think BJ Whitmer used it at least 1 to 2 times per match.
Right.
Yeah, a good match. And I think, like you said, it was 12:45 or 1 o'clock or something they mentioned on commentary at this point. So everybody's exhausted in general. It's also the 14th match on the card. So everybody is a little bit tired.
Yes.
And to have the fan interaction at that point, with that context, it makes it even more remarkable to me. A lot of it was Fannin, but BJ Whitmer too. Just his whole swagger, the fact that he was really good as a wrestler, but he had that douchey ponytail and just kind of walked around like a dick. It made him easy to hate.
Right, for sure. PD able to win to end the show. A great first night of a TPI. Probably one of the greatest, probably the greatest first night of a tournament in IWA history. Like you said, everyone's tired. I know, on those road trips, it's just hard to get any sleep, and you're sleeping on floors, and there's, so many people in a room and whatever. I know I was like dead tired the next day. Since I'm part of the staff and crew, well, we got to get up, we got to go to Sam's and get concessions, and we got to go here and there, and we got to, thankfully the ring could stay up, overnight, but everything else had to be done again for another show. So, dead tired, and we got to prepare for the second night of TPI. All right, and with that, night 1 has ended. Night 2 has begun, and I believe we even started a little bit earlier on night 2. Chicago is an hour behind us. They're in Central Time, so it's probably like 6:30 my time, 7:30 Chicago time. Night 2 for the fans, wrestler, staffs that were there until 1 a.m. And later, the previous night, the last thing you want to see is a dancing James Brown doll and a guy in a tuxedo shirt coming out to the Austin Powers music.
Especially if it's CM Punk. He hated that.
That's not any offense towards CJ McManus.
No.
Both CJ and Billy McNeil worked the Ian Rotten booked Coliseum Championship Wrestling shows in Evansville. They would jump in the car with like Delirious Seidel and Daisy Hayes. They didn't make a ton on those shows, so Ian threw them a bone by putting them on the biggest show of the year. Multiple reviews were like, I appreciate Ian trying to throw someone a bone, but this was not the show, yada, yada.
Felt the same way.
Sadly, all the message boards and stuff from that time have been like rebooted or deleted or whatever, so I didn't have a ton of like info from like fans unless they did like reviews on websites and stuff.
Yep. You know what this reminds me of, Nick?
Yes.
This is going to be a reference that's probably way out of your area of comfort, but in the 90s, the Olympic USA basketball team, the Dream Team, right?
Yes.
Brought in a bunch of guys, huge names, the best team that there's ever been, Michael Jordan, yada, yada, yada. They brought in this guy from Duke University who had just won the national championship, and he was like an average white guy, but he was a really good player. His name was Christian Leitner.
Okay.
So they brought him in as a college athlete to this team with Michael Jordan and all of his, peers on that team. So what's your first reaction? This guy does not belong, right?
Right.
No matter how good he is, no matter anything, it doesn't matter. You already feel like he doesn't belong because he's playing next to Michael Jordan. There's actually an entire 30 for 30 documentary that's, I think, called I Hate Christian Leitner. And
I think I've seen that. I haven't watched it. I've seen like the cover for it.
That's what it is. It's based on that. And like,
I will throw it on my list.
In college, fine athlete, great basketball player.
Right,
he had his own reasons why people didn't like him. But they put him in this situation, and it was just like, fuck. Like, there's nothing his accord that he did wrong. It's just wrong place, wrong time. The showcase was huge for the talent that he brought, and it just made people shit on him. And I feel like that's probably what happened to these three guys, and probably why. That's way too much emphasis to put on it, but they are not well-known names probably, and were not put in the position to be liked right away.
Thunderbolt is a friend of Chris Candido's, and he helped drive the trip from New Jersey, so that's why he's on the show.
Is he a friend or is he a driver?
I mean, he's definitely a driver. I don't know if he doesn't have a clickable name on Cage Match, so.
There were jokes from, I think, Punk about Thunderbolt Patterson, too, and the disappointment that it was not him and the fact that he was wearing purple.
Right. This would go on to be the debut and last IWA match for all three of these competitors.
Fair enough. They had their good spot.
Billy McNeil, though, still active for our friends at St. Louis Anarchy. Ooh. Debuted in 1999. McManus retired in 2013. And I'm not sure about Thunderbolt.
I'm a
Thunderbolt
huge
hits.
fan of. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead.
I'm a huge fan of guys like McNeil that have been around forever, may not have broken out to any degree of recognition, but are still at it. I love guys like that. There's no, like, for me, those guys are as admirable as guys who, put their work in every weekend and every show and made it to the top. Like, I like those guys equally.
Right, absolutely. A local legend in the St. Louis area. Thunderbolt hits a impressive double arm DDT to Billy. CJ breaks it up with a splash, super kicks Thunderbolt, and then steals the pin in 4 minutes 29 seconds. I feel like the fans clapped because the match was over on this one. Again, no offense to the competitors in the match. It was just not the right time, if you ask me. More non-tournament. Did you have anything further for that three-way, Mike Ruff?
No. Billy McNeil's pants were ridiculous. They were like Who pants from 2000.
Yeah, I've never seen pants like that.
Gigantic. And I think, they were compared to pajama pants, which, I mean, fair enough. They would look super comfortable.
Right. Teddy Hart would have loved those pants.
Oh, my God. He probably has a pair. They're probably
He probably bought them from Billy
That's right.
From Billy.
Put some shine on them and dust them off the shelf, yeah.
Right.
Hope you made some good money off those pants, Billy.
Hopefully.
If not, then I hope there is an opportunity for you upon your professional wrestling retirement to where you can sell those and make a fair coin off of them.
Right. More non-tournament. Sal Rinauro gets a IWA Light Heavyweight title match against Jimmy Jacobs. As we mentioned before, Sal Rinauro and Jimmy wrestled in the 2003 tournament. Another great match here. I don't think it was needed, but you gotta book the guys that you booked for 2 days on 2 days. 8:28, Jimmy wins with a double pack of back sentons from the top rope. He really crushed them on that last one.
Huge fan of Jimmy's back sentons. They are very impactful.
I think the first one, he was like, I didn't get him enough. I got to kill him with the second one, and boy, did he.
Yeah, he did. Sal Rinauro got his same stuff in, the same kind of spots, which is cool. Don't need to see it 2 nights in a row, kind of like you said. It's always weird for me to see non-title matches booked on non-tournament matches booked on a show that is contained with tournament matches, but doesn't kind of go in between those matches. You know what I mean? Like
right.
But like you said, got to get the stuff in when you can.
After that, Ian Rotten promo to lead into Ian Rotten versus Steve Stone. Anything goes, Falls Count Anywhere, non-sanctioned by the NWA. The last match was stopped due to blood loss, due to the NWA rules, so that's why this match happened. The story is Ian Rotten fired Steve Stone, and then Jim Fannin brought him back. They were former tag team partners until I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly how the fallout happened, but Stone was gone, and then Fannin brought him back. This match basically happens for Chris Candido to come in the side door as Fannin is running away from Ian. He goes out the side door of the gym. The door is blocked. Ian can't get out. He finally gets out. Here's Candido pounding on him. This is, classic IWA Bedlam. My sister gets involved. She's trying to hit Fannin with a chair. She's yelling at Ed Schumann to do something, and Schumann's like, I can't. The insurance, you can't get in there. You got to stay out here, which started kind of like his heel turn in IWA Mid-South. And they're just beating on Ian. Finally, I think Patty goes to the back and is like, hey, come help me. And Iceberg's the only one hanging around. So Iceberg comes out and runs off the dream team, the Fannin family, whatever you want to call them. And then a fantastic, crazy Terry Funk-like promo from Candido in the locker room.
Quintessential IWA for me. Anytime Patty makes an appearance,
some shit's going down.
Yeah, it gets a special star of attention from me. Like, if she's there, it's going to be some classic Bedlam. It's so funny. I love, there's so many of these moments throughout the history, and we've covered what, like 5 of them already.
right.
It's so like it's not predictable, but it's so authentic to like the character of that company,
I
and
think,
then just the fact that
and Patty's not gonna just like stop. You know what I mean? Like she's not stopping until the angle's over. You know
until
what I mean?
shit's done.
So like, if she has a chair, she's swinging that motherfucker for 5 minutes. If she has,
and you're lucky it's not covered in barbed wire. Yeah, like it goes for me like this whole so the match is set up for the angle, right? There's like who cares about the match? The match is whatever. But Fannin being the dick heel manager, weasel snake, whatever you want to call him, like intentionally baits in Ian to the back where Candido in gear, right? Like he's in full gear. Comes in, and I think like for me part of it is like because I saw that I was like, okay, this is going to set up a match on the show, and it's like no, what I see happening is that if he's not in his gear, like his signature look, it's just a blonde dude in street gear for the fans, right? Like think about it from that perspective. If you see this tan son of a bitch that is kind of sawed off and muscular, and he got the bleach blonde hair with the, you know, like that's Chris Candido's persona.
And he's like sober at the time and like trying to get his body back, and like you said, tanned like a motherfucker.
Oh man, like you go back to 2000, WCW was like the last time where he looked really, really good physically.
Right.
But fast forward 4 years later, he's looking pretty good. It's more of a veteran body than the, you know, like, yeah. I can't say enough great things about Chris Candido, so I won't. But like I said, Fannin baits him in. Fannin gets on the mic talking all kinds of shit. Patty comes with a chair I think it's mostly to get Jim. Like, she doesn't really give a shit about anyone other than fucking up Jim Fannin, which I'm okay with. And it's just a cast of characters. Like, only in IWA are you going to see Ian Rotten, Jim Fannin, Chris Candido, Patty, of course, Ed Schumann. Like, it's crazy. Like, what the fuck is happening? I'm just sitting here watching it like, okay. Like, there is a checklist of shit that needs to happen in a traditional IWA chaotic moment. Right. And the cherry on top of every one of those cakes is Ian getting his shoulder put back in.
Right, of course.
Like, it's not done until the fat lady sings or Ian Rotten has his shoulder replaced.
Right.
So we got that. We got that in this during a promo. And then Ian will come out later in the show with like a towel wrapped around his hand to keep his shoulder in place.
Some makeshift
jerry rig shit. It's that quality IWA Mid-South medical team.
Like, that's the IWA sling right there, pal.
Like, if you got tape, a towel, and some super glue, somebody will take care of you.
Right. Yeah, as you said, Ian comes out later and cuts the promo. You call yourself the Dream Team. Okay, well, next month at the anniversary show, it's going to be me and Dusty Rhodes taking on Candido and Steve Stone. People seem to be into that, and then that was in October, and then in December they did a Chris Candido, BJ Whitmer, and Steve Stone against Danny Daniels, Ian Rotten, and Terry Funk match. So we had some banger.
Just a reason for Ian to get big matches with his idols, right? Like,
yeah, pretty much, and. Obviously, he had worked with Terry before closely, but Terry and Dusty and Terry and Lawler and whoever else was doing like those matches around the loop, and he had seen them at like 3PW and stuff like that. So he definitely wanted to bring Terry back in, and I think there's a funny story of Terry asking, what did Dusty do when he was here? He's like, oh, we had a brawl and he got busted open and he did this and this. And then Terry was like, all right, I know what I got to do. And, Terry Funk went out there and had a classic Terry Funk match in December. So like I said,
Terry Funk, man, what a human being.
Shout out to Toolman, Tim Tatum, for taking a bump from Candido during that promo. I was watching it and Jess was like, Jesus Christ.
Back bump on the hard
right, just
floor.
like, God bless. Just tossed him.
What a Candido moment.
Right. God bless him. Next up, more TPI tournament action. Danny Daniels versus Rain Man. Rain Man able to cradle Danny after a superplex in 10 minutes. Another upset, in my opinion, for Rain Man here. Anything about this match?
I love booking like this. That's it.
Right. I mean, he made Rain Man. He made Rain Man in one weekend.
I have that in my notes. I think it maybe even before the next round match was, how was Rain Man not made after this weekend?
Right, and I don't think he came back until the next year TPI.
And he did okay throughout his career, right? It wasn't terrible, but it was nowhere.
He had quite a little run in Ring of Honor as a tag team, Dark City Fight Club, and.
But I mean, if you have this video of this tournament and you show it to anyone, he seems like he's a star.
Right, for sure.
He could have fit into any one of those factions that Homicide or B-Boy or them had.
Yeah.
I hate to be promote a stereotype, but there is that in wrestling, right? He could have fit into any one of those.
Especially at that time.
The beatdown crews and the things like that.
Right.
Of wrestling past. So I feel like he could have been a strong asset to any one of those organizations.
Yeah, I agree totally.
A super great athlete too. He's not given the love that I think maybe this was his golden goose and never lived up to the potential again, but fuck it. He was outstanding at this show.
Yeah, plus his entrance music is really boss too. 8-Ball and
that's right.
MJG or whatever it is.
Good ones on.
Yeah, there's some solid entrance music. We should have made note of that. Next up, we got Nigel.
Hang on, Nick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We're on that, and we're segueing into the next Samoa Joe match. Why did Joe use 99 Problems?
Well, he was using the Champ is Here.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if he didn't have his music or if I didn't have it, and I just
had the Tracy Books CD instead.
Right, I just had the full Jay-Z album, so he picked off of that. And then obviously when he loses the title, he doesn't use, the Champ is Here.
Yeah.
Next up, as you mentioned, Samoa Joe versus Nigel McGuinness. The infamous spot of Nigel's headstand in the corner with Joe hitting that Yakuza kick.
Yes.
I saw that on so many videos and stuff like that. And then Samoa Joe able to choke out Nigel in 13:20. Any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, the shout out for that spot specifically is not Nigel for the headstand, Joe for the kick. It's the Smart Mark video team. Are they the who?
Yes. Yeah.
What a fucking camera angle.
Right. I mean, they had it right on there.
He had his face dead center with foot going into face. It doesn't get any better than that. So shout out to those guys. What a shot. Nigel hits Joe with a super kick early in the match, and he looks out. He sells it brilliantly.
Right. Yeah.
Nigel, I don't think at least at the time, wasn't known for his hard hitting. He was more of a technical maneuver guy. Right. But this added, again, credibility to Nigel's game. And the thing that I noticed first and foremost was the dueling chants, the hero inspired "Let's go Joe, let's go Nigel" chants.
Right, I didn't even notice that.
We covered the last spotlight we did was the Hero Joe match, and we talked about that and how that maybe wasn't the first time, but it was the first big time. And then they kind of carried that over. And Joe is such an easy name to chant anyways, so it was only natural. Good match. Like you said, the highlight is that kick to the face, and then Joe gets the choke and gets the tap. Strong showing by Nigel. Everybody knows he's good, so it's not shocking. But to be able to mix it up, have matches with guys like Claudio and Danielson, and then go in there and get slapped around and beat up by Joe, it shows what a talent you really are. So Nigel gets credit for that.
Right, absolutely. Shout out to Smart Mark Glenn for bringing that right to your living room or wherever you have your TV. That kick.
Let's give a moment for the crew and the staff of these shows. Like, yeah, it's great. 24 of the best professional wrestlers in indie wrestling, but without the crew running the music, the commentary team, the guys promoting the show, the camera guys, none of this shit. We're not talking about any of it.
Right, for sure. Chikara offer match. Next up, non-tournament. Hello Wicked, Larry Sweeney, and Jigsaw against Fist and Trick Davis. Fist being Gran Akuma and Icarus. Jigsaw has 16 total IWA appearances. He'd actually go on to be in the 2006 TPI tournament. Larry Sweeney has 31 IWA appearances. Unfortunately, Larry Sweeney has passed away since then. Nothing but love for Larry Sweeney. I'm sad that he's not here. He should be a billionaire, if you ask me. Gran Akuma has 9 IWA appearances and was in the 2006 TPI tournament as well. Icarus has 10 total IWA appearances. Trick Davis has 147 total IWA appearances. His last one on the last show against Logan James. First one on July 4th, 2003 for We Are Family. 3 TPI tournaments under his belt in 06, 08, and then 2016. Great, fun little match. Trick Davis didn't look out of place. Everyone was able to hit their signature stuff. Anything to say about this one, Mike?
Eddie Kingston on commentary with the obligatory Icarus reference throughout his commentary career in announcing or commentating Icarus's matches. He always calls him Icarus. I don't know why. It's funny though. Trick Davis's 90s haircut was great. He reminded me of Eric Matthews from Boy Meets World. Trick Davis doesn't get a lot of credit either. He's a great wrestler. Fit in well. I think he was the only guy who was not a natural Chikara guy. Did some work with Hero. I mean, I think he was up there probably. You would know better than I would. But not thought of as a Chikara guy. And, held his own well. I like Trick Davis. All these guys are great.
Yeah, Trick, he did a few weekends with Chikara for like Young Lions Cup and
that's right.
Stuff like that. And obviously Chris Hero is his mentor, so. Yeah.
He does not get the credit that he deserves for his
still killing it.
Take and throw punches and just be a BMF in a small body.
Right, absolutely. Isn't he? Yeah, he's super jacked now. He does like Black Label Pro and stuff like that nowadays.
And he ditched the trash bag pants too, huh? Because he did that a while ago, right?
Yeah, he's got the tights nowadays. Yep.
Good for him. Larry Sweeney is amazing. Let's just take a minute. You did already, but what a fucking excellent person and wrestling personality and wrestler and all things. I've never seen him do anything badly. My favorite look of his too, with the long tights.
Yes.
Just a fucking star, and it's unfortunate that he didn't get to shine his star brighter than he did. Like you said, if he was alive now, he would be the zillionaire and running everything.
Right, for sure. Next up, back to tournament action, AJ Styles versus Matt Sydal. This is match 3 in their trilogy here in IWA Mid-South. AJ Styles has won all the others, once in April for Simply the Best 5, and won 3 days before this in Evansville, Indiana. For at least TPI and the anniversary show, Ian thought that running 4 shows for a show week was better than just running 2. That way he can get better deals on the guys by giving them more money and, whatever. Unfortunately, that never worked out.
Yeah.
In terms of crowd size or whatever the hell. So the quad shots ended up, I think, dying after that anniversary show, if I'm not mistaken.
Memorable, if nothing else.
Right. A memorable what not to do when you're running a pro wrestling company, in my opinion.
And the unfortunate part too, Nick, with that in mind, is that you gave some of your matchups earlier in the week before the tournament. So I think AJ Danielson had a match on like a Wednesday.
Right.
And then they would cross paths later in tournament action, we'll say, which kind of took away some of the mystique. But you know what? It gave more fans more wrestling, so how bad could it be?
Right. Seidel goes for his moonsault belly to belly. AJ's able to reverse it and hit the Styles Clash off the second in 12:45 to advance. The thing about this is AJ, I think after that Simply the Best match would be like, everybody says you're going to be the next AJ Styles. Well, I don't want you to be the next AJ Styles. I want you to be the first Matt Sydal. That was his promo.
That's it.
Which I mean, totally agree with that. AJ Styles is one of the absolute best to ever do it.
Do you think Matt Sydal ever became the first Matt Sydal, or did Matt Sydal become the first Evan Bourne?
That's a good one, man. I would say maybe he became the first Evan Bourne, because he definitely had a bigger run. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, tweet at me, email me, whatever you got to do, and let me know what you think. Is he the first Matt Sydal, or is he the first Evan Bourne? That's definitely a something to ponder, if you ask me.
And I think almost there were two different Matt Sydals, and like injuries are a real thing and a motherfucker, right?
Right.
Like the crispness in this version of Matt Sydal is extraordinary. Like his snap Rana, his moonsault off the back.
Right.
He doesn't have the same pop he has, but it was 20 years ago. And how many injuries ago, and a foot thing many years later.
Right.
And like, obviously it's not the same guy. The fact that he's still going at a high level is fucking remarkable. But my enjoyment in Matt Sydal is different now than it was in 2004.
Right.
Which is, I think, fair for most that aren't fucking Bryan Danielson.
Right. I agree with that. After this, the Ian promo to announce Dusty coming in. And then we follow that up with a non-title 6-way elimination women's match. Rain, Mischief, Mickey Knuckles, Daisy Hayes, Lacey, and Mercedes Martinez. Mischief able to eliminate Mercedes Martinez last with the Desecrator. And this just goes to show you, like, we have the best independent wrestlers in the world in for the weekend, and we did not leave out the women at the time either. Prazak obviously bringing the women's division up quite a bit as he was in charge of putting it together and bringing in people. And then we'd later see like Sarah Del Rey and Cheerleader Melissa and Ariel and pro wrestlers that were just fantastic that, we didn't get to see a lot because they lived in New England, or they lived in California, or they lived in, wherever. So a mix of everything here on this TPI weekend. Like I said, Mischief able to eliminate Mercedes to win the match, pinning the IWA Mid-South NWA Midwest women's champion to do so. Any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, it was a showcase match. Daisy Hayes was a highlight for me. Big fan.
Love Daisy Hayes
too. I would love to see Daisy Hayes come back for one more, but whatever. We talked about that. Yes. It was a good display. It was way before its time. Maybe not way before its time, but a few years before its time, where it would truly be first showcases where people were like, shit, like women's wrestling is legit. So shout out to Dave Prazak for making the narrative on women's wrestling change so significantly. I think he deserves, if not all the credit, a very large majority of the credit.
Yeah, I agree.
It's ridiculous. Without Dave Prazak, women's wrestling does not get the respect it gets today, period. There's no argument with that fact. It was a good thing. Set up potentially a Mischief and Mercedes Martinez match for the belt.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure if that happened. I didn't look at the next month.
I'm sure it happened at one point, maybe not before the title, but for sure it happened later.
Next up, Petey Williams versus Eric Cannon. Back to tournament action. Eric Cannon defeats Petey Williams in 12:40 with the Glimmering Warlock. With that win, he wins the IWA Mid-South heavyweight title. It would be a short reign for Eric Cannon as he broke his collarbone the next month during one of these quad shots. So that's unfortunate for Eric Cannon. Pretty decent pop for him winning the belt. What say you, Mike?
Yeah, same. I think it was a good move to take the belt off of Petey Williams, put on Eric Cannon, who was super hot at the time, just as the dick heel. My favorite spot of the match was Petey Williams being injured on the outside, and I think Bryce being, told to count him out. And then, of course, Eric Cannon turns around. He's like, messing with the crowd. So Petey rolls back in, and he's like, the injury was not a legit one, apparently.
Right.
But he
playing
tells,
some possum.
Yeah, he tells Bryce to keep the count going because, Cannon's not watching. So Bryce keeps the count going, and Eric thinks that he's outside, and then he's like, oh shit, he's right here. It was just cool. Something you don't see very often.
Right.
And it played the crowd up a lot. I liked it. Glimmering Warlock is always cool. It's one of my favorite versions of that move. So, yeah, good for him. I think it's Cannon's, his first major title, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, set up some cool stuff later, too. So, unfortunately, PD did not advance further in the tournament like he had hoped, defending his title like Danny Daniels did, but the story was good.
Right, absolutely. After that, Nate Webb and Mike Quackenbush. Quack able to win with the lightning lock in 7:25. Samoa Joe on commentary for this one.
Yeah.
Little known fact, the IWA cracked security team. Most parolees, Ian believes in second chances. That is not true, but looking at this IWA security team of Big Sweaty Mike, Aaron, Jesus as they called him, you could, maybe believe that. Like I said, Quack over with the lightning lock in 7:25. I thought it was super fun. Nate got to showcase some of his wacky Nate 2P submissions and got to do some stuff. Broke out a Phoenix Splash that he missed and all this stuff. I thought it was a fun one. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, it was a fun match, a unique matchup, having a technical guy like Quack against Nate, who's a little, I don't want to say sloppier, but less refined. The funniest part for me was in the beginning, even before the match starts, Nate, of course, making the signature entrance. Quack is having a great time clapping along, and even to the Smart Mark camera calls Nate's entrance the strongest entrance in pro sports. So that's a feather in the Nate Webb cap, as far as folks who have put over his entrance, because I feel like almost everybody has.
Right.
But I couldn't imagine an opportunity where Quack would have been on that list other than this one. So shout out to Nate's entrance and Wheatus for their wonderful stylings of Teenage Dirtbag. It's a great match. Nate doesn't get to do stuff like that very often, so I thought it was cool. Quack, I think obviously maybe gets the win.
Yep.
It didn't seem like it was any surprise, but yep.
After that, CM Punk versus Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson able to defeat Punk in 16:05 with the cattle mutilation. Another strong match, a great match. Punk having fun coming out and jaw-jacking with Danielson before the introductions, and just another great match for this TPI tournament. What's your thoughts on Punk and Danielson? Danielson able to beat Punk in 16:05 with the cattle mutilation.
Yeah, we've seen this match a few times before. I have in my notes what we talked about before is just the fact that Danielson is at the top of his game 20 years ago. Punk did normal Punk things like the Pepsi twist, but Danielson was able to turn that into a dragon suplex and then hit the cattle mutilation off that. It seemed a little bit maybe rehearsed, but it was a cool counter to something that we're used to seeing Punk do.
Right.
Punk's gear is that cool red gear, and he also has like the red wrist and hand tape and the red elbow pad. It's very cohesive. Good looking match. I think it's what anybody would expect of these two guys at that point to do. So nothing surprising, nothing outstanding, but a great match.
Right, for sure. Next up, non-tournament action for the IWA Mid-South Tag Team titles as the Wild Cards take on Brad Bradley and Ryan Boz, and they take on Iceberg and Tank. There's a promo from Brad and Boz that's interrupted by the Wild Cards before the match. Eddie Kingston, a former two-time IWA Tag Team Champion, former IWA World Champion, won the Strong Style Tournament in 2006. 4 TPI appearances in the tournament, 4 in the Revolution Strong Star Tournament as well. 85 matches overall for Kingston in his IWA career. The Wildcard's debut was August of 2003. Eddie's last match in IWA was September of 2018.
Good IWA resume, doesn't he?
Yeah. Blackjack's last match in IWA was in December of 2004. His last match in all of pro wrestling was the following week. He had a knee injury that, took his spirit, I guess you would say. So unfortunately, Blackjack Marciano, only had about a 2-year run in wrestling.
You know, him and Kingston are still.
I think they're still pretty good friends. I used to be friendly with Blackjack on social media, but I think he's deleted his social media presence. So haven't heard from him in a while. I really enjoyed his comedic timing and presence in this match. It wasn't try hard. It was perfect every single time, no matter what he did.
It was a great compliment to Eddie Kingston's personality.
I absolutely agree. Brad Bradley, first match was September of 2001. Last match was in 2019, a return after 14 years, where he took on Larry D at the arena. Brad was in 2 TPI tournaments, 03 and 05, 74 overall matches in IWA. Ryan Boz did a total of 79 IWA Mid-South matches, making his debut in December of 02 and his last show in September of 05. Was never in a TPI, but was in the 04 King of the Deathmatch tournament earlier that summer. Tank made his IWA debut in June of 04 in the King of the Deathmatches. His last show for us was in 2021. 51 matches overall, 7 King of the Deathmatch tournaments, 1 Revolution Strong Star tournament, and 2 TPI, 05 and 07. It's a real shame we didn't get Iceberg in IWA Mid-South proper, because Iceberg was a great Southern Deathmatch wrestler. He appeared at this show this weekend, and then he did appear on the second ECW Arena show that IWA did in 07 in a deathmatch 4-way tag, if I'm not mistaken. Comments on this one: Kingston hits a moonsault onto a pile. Super sketch. Maybe it's his last moonsault ever. There's a funny part where they take down Ryan Boz and Kingston throws him out of the ring, and the fans are like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "He's not the legal man, you fucking idiots!" in the ring, and it made me laugh so hard. Wildcards win with the drive-by, the old Public Enemy finish. There's no actual title belts to be had in IWA Mid-South at this time. There's a promo afterwards. Eddie shows off his mat burn from the moonsault. And the Wildcards went on to have 7 successful title defenses between Chikara and IWA Mid-South while holding those phantom IWA Mid-South tag team titles. Anything to say about this one, Mike?
Yeah, just a normal, what I thought was what to be expected of the match, and I'll take the opportunity to put Eddie Kingston over again. He can do everything well, especially at this point. 20 years ago, he's having the promos that he's having. He may not speak as eloquently as some of the other great promos that we think of, but like we said before, his authenticity is unmatched. Even at this point, as a young guy. Looking back on it now, at the time I didn't think it was weird, but looking at it now, it's so ridiculous. The big ass white pants with the big ass white tees, and it's I enjoy it. The finish is the powder to Bradley's eyes, and Bradley hits a big lariat on Boz, which I think is the beginning of the end of that team.
Right. It's definitely close.
And, Ryan Boz was kind of a brief blip on the IWA Mid-South radar for me, at least. Bradley has been everywhere doing everything, and he pops up on almost every show.
Right.
I don't know about it anymore, but at least there was a period of time.
He's an NWA superstar nowadays.
Is he?
Yes.
Okay. Ryan Boz's hair always reminded me of, McDonald's French fries. It has the same color, it has the same texture, it has the same length. So every time I see Ryan Boz, I think of McDonald's French fries. Sorry, Ryan. But then he cut his hair and it was all for nothing, and I was super disappointed. So, yeah, Ryan Boz I think doesn't get enough credit for the brief run that he had, and he did a lot of stuff with Fannin too. That was cool. Correct me if I'm wrong. The wild cards align with the Fannin family shortly thereafter.
Kind of. It's like a loose association, and then I think the move was definitely to have them as the tag team, but unfortunately, Blackjack's injury, it didn't happen. There was one point that, we were trying to get, like, me and Fannin, I think we're trying to convince Kingston, like, hey, just have Blackjack, like, if he's better, like, he like rehabbed and, he was able to use his knee again and stuff. Like, if he's better, just, he can just work for IWA. He doesn't have to work for anyone else. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it didn't come to be.
Yeah.
Next up, the match you talked about earlier, Rain Man versus Samoa Joe. Joe defeated Rain Man in 54 seconds with a lariat. 54 seconds. Watching it back, I was like, was that supposed to be the finish? Because he did the late kick out. So I was like, oh, maybe that, that wasn't supposed to be, but I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be the finish. Rain Man jumps him before Joe's introduced and just goes to town, and then finally Joe, reverses it, kills him with a lariat to win, to go to the finals of the TPI tournament. Any thoughts on this one, Mike?
Yeah, I said it earlier, kind of in joking, but not really. This probably was my favorite match of the night, which is weird. It was super short. But just the story that was told, like Rain Man has been knocking off these big names throughout the tournament. Everybody has high expectations of his ability to do that with Joe now, right? Like he could make a run at this thing. He attacks him early. Everyone's like, oh shit, this could be it. And then Joe just completely destroys him with a lariat and it's over. Like That to me is real shit. It's great to have a 20-minute match where it's back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But it's like, nope, this guy had his chance, missed that opportunity, got fucked up, and now has been beaten. So the story of it is paramount to the quality of the wrestling in the match for me.
Yep.
And it just made it legit. Like it added so much legitimacy to this entire thing. So it's Joe being Joe, and it's him putting the fire out on the Rain Man train.
Right, for sure. Next up, AJ Styles, Eric Hannon. Another lariat, a discus lariat this time in 6:04 to send AJ Styles to the finals. Cannon still the IWA Mid-South champion due to not agreeing to defend it throughout the tournament. I think some people caught on to that. Some people did not. So still your IWA Mid-South champion, Eric Cannon. But it's crazy that the next month, Cannon would break his collarbone in a match against Austin Aries. So later on in the show, there was a four-way of like Chris Daniels, Chris Sabin, AJ, and maybe Punk or someone. And the winner was the new IWA champion, and AJ Styles won that title. So he actually did defeat Eric Cannon by proxy for the IWA title.
You can't say that he didn't beat him.
Just not in the TPI tournament. Any comments about this one, Mike?
Yeah, that's a funny storyline to go along with it, because usually, Cannon would have, oh, you never beat me. Actually, he did beat you.
Right. That's just me. I mean, we didn't do that back then, cool. But, looking back on it.
It was a good way to keep heat on Eric Cannon and also not book yourself into a corner with having the winner of the tournament be the champion. So win-win, standard match.
After that,
every match with AJ is great. So what do you say?
Like you said, especially these semifinals, they're all great, but like we've already given the history and backstory for a lot of these guys. So it's like, how much more do we have to say about how good Bryan Danielson is? Bryan Danielson, Mike Quackenbush, 12:03 Central while this match started. Danielson able to beat Quack with a cradle out of the cattle mutilation to advance to the finals. Another great match with two great professional wrestlers. You could definitely feel the kind of respect that Danielson had for Mike Quackenbush as they wrestled. Didn't take them lightly. Quack looked great. Danielson looked great. 12:03 with the cradle out of the cattle mutilation. What do you have to say about this one, Mike?
Yeah, right amount of time. I thought it was perfect. Got the point across, got some stuff in. I appreciated Quack and the gear changes. I always like that in a tournament. We talked about that a little bit off air. He had the different pants for every different round, which is always cool to me. Airplane spin and giant swing back to back kind of threw Danielson off his feet, literally.
Yeah.
Sent him into a bit of a twisty. So, but ended up getting the win. Pinned him up with the cattle mutilation counter to counter. So that sets up our amazing finals of AJ, Danielson, and Joe, who I think were probably the top three from a non-IWA knowledgeable audience. Is that a fair way of putting it? The large majority felt that those were the three top names in the tournament. And it's fitting that they're in the finals. Like I said earlier, too, we also had some some unpredictable winners, but ultimately got to what everybody would agree are the top three guys. So win-win situation, and sets up a highly anticipated final of three of the best, not only of the time, but potentially ever in independent wrestling.
Right, all time, yeah. It's like you see a list of names, and then you go, hey, give me the three guys you'd put in the finals. That would be, the top, every single time.
And would you see Joe beating Rain Man to get into the finals? No.
Right.
You'd see Joe beating, I don't know, pick anyone else.
Right. Yep, I totally agree. Next up, to give the finals a little bit of time to rest and put everything together, we have a non-tournament 7-way. The Fannin family, the Dream Team, are on commentary of Chris Candido, Jim Fannin, Steve Stone, Nate Webb's there, Sal Renaro's there. Big tornado DDT from Saban gets a big reaction. Saban eliminates Sexton with a cop killer in 232. Aries eliminates Saban in 346 with a brainbuster in 450. Shelley defeats Aries with a crucifix in 423. Claudio defeats Shelley by submission in 526. BJ defeats Claudio with the Shining Wizard, and then BJ defeats Jimmy Rave in 1021 with the wrist clutch exploder to win the match. Jimmy Rave comes in and knees BJ Whitmer in the face, busting him open. I thought it was Hardway, but if you look, I think BJ Whitmer had something to do with that, looking back after all these years. But BJ able to win the match for the semi-main event of TPI 04. What do you have to say about this scramble match?
The highlight for me was Candido and the Fannin family taking over the commentary.
Right.
And Chris Saban, I think, puts somebody in a cop killer and everybody kind of loses it. And then he's setting up the next opponent for a similar one. And Candido's like, oh my God, is that one of those crazy ass things again? It's just like, it's so like old man, but also Chris Candido to be that goofball that just kind of shows his ass. And, it was a very Candido moment.
They definitely made the match more entertaining with their commentary.
Oh, God, so much. And I mean, it's not designed to be.
And God bless Jim Fannin for trying to call it straight. And, and Candido and both Steve Stone are just like fucking off and messing around. And Fannin's like, oh, Todd Sexton. Oh, Alex Shelley. And like anybody he doesn't know, oh, that's Claudio Castagnoli. Oh, that's the guy with the nice jacket, right? Yeah, that's the guy with the jacket.
He's like, Candido, what do you think? What would you think? What would you pay for a jacket like that?
Right.
And then at the end of it, when it's just Whitmer and Rave in the finals, Jim like goes down to ringside, and I think BJ gets busted open with, I don't know, maybe a knee, and Fanning goes down there and he's like, ref, check the knee, like
right.
Stupid stuff. But I mean, it was designed to give a break and get guys out there, so it did its job.
Right, for sure. I don't know if we took an intermission here or if this is what we counted as the intermission. But then the finals of TPI 2004, the American Dragon Bryan Danielson against Samoa Joe against the phenomenal AJ Styles. I just recently watched this within like the last year or so with Nick Jr. I was on the High Spots Wrestling Network. Shout out High Spots Wrestling Network. And was looking, they have like best of AJ Styles in IWA, best of CM Punk in IWA. So I was just seeing, if there's any AJ Styles matches I didn't remember or, whatever. And Nick Jr. was like by the TV, he goes, AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Bryan Danielson. Oh my God. And I was like freaking out about it. I was like, let's watch it, man. So we ended up watching it. Samoa Joe able to eliminate Bryan Danielson in 10:42. He tried his damnedest for this Styles clash, finally able to get it off. AJ Styles beats Samoa Joe in 14:32 to win TPI 2004. Any thoughts about this one, Mike?
Yeah, like you said, the Styles clash on the third try was great. The first two, I feel like were pretty legitimate, couldn't get him ups.
Right.
And even the first one, like he had him, but his neck was tucked, and it was like, yeah, that's going to be ugly even if it lands. So drops him, sells the back, tries again, drops him, sells the back again, and he's like, fuck it, this is the time. And he
that's like that like you're so frustrated, you're like, God damn it, I'm getting it this time, or I'm gonna fucking kill somebody.
That's right. We could go with a 450 or the elbow or the
whatever
forearm or whatever you want to call it, discus lariat, but it's not the same. And I want to get this shit. And I feel like Joe somehow, like, not levitated, but somehow his body.
He definitely helped. Yeah.
Should have been. He was all stretched out. He looked like $1 million, and he's like, "Come on, buddy, get this thing."
Right? Yeah. Just throw me down, please.
Yep. And he got it, and it looked good, and it was solid, and it was just like the ultimate, not feather in the cap, but the ultimate, finish to that match and that whole story. And just knowing the relationship that those two guys have is cool to watch, because you know that they wanted to get that together.
Right, totally. Yeah, you can. I mean, they were trying so hard together to try to get that. They finally got it. Styles Clash 1, 2, 3. The phenomenal AJ Styles is your winner. And then, of course, because it's IWA Mid-South, fucking Petey Williams hits him with a Canadian Destroyer afterwards to put over their NWA TNA feud. Because, you gotta push the storylines, kids.
It was fucked up too, because it was like 10 minutes of everyone just congratulating him and high-fiving and shaking hands and shit. And everybody finally clears out of the ring, and Petey's the last one to congratulate him, and AJ's like bent over, like trying to suck wind. And he immediately jumps into the fucking Canadian Destroyer, and he's like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, what an asshole. You Canadian asshole, Petey Williams. Didn't even get a trophy, didn't get nothing but a Canadian Destroyer to solidify his win.
How do you feel about the celebration of a tournament win being spoiled by something like that?
We've done it a couple times in IWA Mid-South. I don't know that I would have done this at TPI 04, because it didn't. I don't think we had a PD AJ match, so it was really just pushing It was really just pushing the TNA storyline they were doing at the time.
Is that maybe part of the deal? Do you think? Like, hey, you can use our guys if you.
No, I don't think anybody ever had like a thing like that. I think Ian was just trying to do it to show hey, we can work together. Yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Definitely would not have been my move,
No.
For the TPI finals, but, whatever. There you have it, folks. The TPI 04 Mid-South Memories episode. Like I said, I've watched the show a few times in my wrestling history and my wrestling fandom, and it still holds up. It's still just absolutely fantastic. Still one of the greatest of all time.
It's still relevant, dude. Like, if you put this on today, how many of these guys are still on fucking TV?
Right. I mean,
like half, at least.
Right. I mean, if there's someone worth seeing, you're seeing them weekly on TV, whether it's WWE, whether it's AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact, whatever it may be. Definitely one of the greatest of all time.
Nick, just
What's
real
that?
quick. Let me just go down this list real quick.
Yeah.
24 guys, right? Austin
Yep.
Aries not currently on TV, but was. Todd Sexton, nothing. Claudio still on TV. Eric Hannon not. Nigel McGuinness still on TV in a different role. Mike Quackenbush not. Roderick Strong still on TV. Hollow Wicked still in GCW, at least, high level indies. Sauer and Aro still NWA, not on TV necessarily, but high level. Nate Webb still working GCW. Rain Man disappeared. Jimmy Rave unfortunately passed. Super Dragon is a mystery. Alex Shelley still everywhere, anywhere, anywhere, right? That's kind of the more fitting. He could be anywhere at any given time. He fits in everywhere. Matt Seidel still on TV. Chris Sabin, same with Alex Shelley, right? Could be anywhere at any given time.
Yep.
Danielson, a world champion in a major organization on TV every week, still at the top of his form. AJ, same story. Joe, same story. CM Punk, same story. Petey Williams, bleached his hair and went the Papa Pump route. I don't think he's around anywhere.
He's
but
a backstage agent for WWE.
Fair enough. That's even better because now he's not taking bumps and still getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. Chris Hero still doing his thing in his own way, right? Was signed, did amazing things. BJ
AEW talent. Recently returned to wrestling at West Coast Pro, where he's the head booker. So still doing the damn thing.
BJ Whitmer was an agent. Now he has disappeared, and Danny Daniels is still running an independent company. So, I mean, literally over half of them are still heavily involved. Most of them on TV. Most of them in relevant storylines. It's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Right. And to have all of these guys 20 years ago in the same place at the same time, in the same tournament, under the same banner is shocking, amazing. Like, that stuff doesn't happen.
Right, totally. I mean, people always say, like, this is the ultimate tournament, the top indie tournament, whatever nice things you can say about this tournament, that's what they say about it. I mean, it was just the best of the best at the time, and I think Ian said it multiple times, after, like, in 2018, like, to run the 2004 TPI tournament would cost me, millions of dollars now, thousands of dollars now, because it's just so star-studded. And like you said, we don't have this show to put over Ian, but he always had an eye for talent. He always knew who was next up. He always knew who was going to be a big deal. And I think this show, shows that, because the three best in the tournament are in the finals. Because of course they would be. They're the three best. Of course they're going to be better than everyone else. They're going to be better than the Todd Sextons and the Sauer Naros and Nate Webbs, and they're the three best in the world. So of course they're going to be in the finals. I think just a great set of shows, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this return to Midsouth Memories for both myself and Mike Ruff. I felt with the 20th anniversary of TPI coming up, I felt I owed it to those shows. I was just however old I was in 2004, 16 years old, 16, I think it was. I got to watch some of the absolute best wrestling, in the world, behind a sound system and a 5 CD changer for the show, and got to hear the commentary of Dave Prazak and Chris Candido and Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson, live at the show, and then getting to hear it again, and getting to see all of the fallen brothers and sisters of the world of wrestling once again, in their prime, in their peak. And just, if you've never watched the show, it's on IWTV. I'm sure it's on other websites as well. You definitely owe it to yourself if you're an indie wrestling fan, if you're a pro wrestler, if you're just a fan, if you're a commentator, whatever you are. If you enjoy pro wrestling, you owe it to yourself to watch the show if you haven't. Any closing thoughts about the TPI, Mike?
I really don't have any. I think we covered everything that we wanted to. This one was circled on our calendar, I guess, a year ago when we started this show as something that we really wanted to do. I see it as the epitome of what I love about independent wrestling and grew up with. So it was important for me, and I think for us, I could speak for you too, to get this one under our belt. And if we never make another episode, which is not true, but if we never make another one, we will be happy knowing that we knocked this one out. To that point, we have continued big things expected now. We want to light another fire under this thing and keep them going. Right. We took summer off. It was a little bit hectic for everyone, but I think coming back with a bang was an important thing to do for both of us. And hopefully we didn't lose too many listeners in the process. And hopefully we will have gained a few by doing the show and talking about the wonderful names that this tournament was comprised of.
Right, for sure, yeah. Unfortunately, over the summer with Mike living in California, me in Kentucky, and our kids being home from school, it did not work out too well. And I know we talked about this on a previously canned episode, but I had internet problems with some storms and whatever else, but we're back on the right track. We're back in the driver's seat. We do have a plan for October already. As always, if you have old IWA Mid-South photos, you can send them to MidsouthMemories@gmail.com. Christina recently did that as of a couple months ago. A lot of old photos that I hadn't seen in quite some time brought back. I'm working on the Google Drive box of all the photos so that can be seen by everyone eventually. I got to get everything organized and stuff of that nature. As for me, still doing the freelance commentary stuff. You can check me out on Facebook at Nick Maniwa, and you can see my schedule. This will come out after this weekend that we're recording during, but I have Paradigm Pro Wrestling on Friday. Star-studded show. Definitely check out the Paradigm Pro YouTube channel. They're starting to put their full shows up on there instead of any of the streaming services. So definitely check out Paradigm Pro Wrestling. And then on Saturday, I return to Evansville, Indiana for Hooligan Championship Wrestling. They're introducing a men's heavyweight title, and their last show was all women, and now they're mixing it up a little bit. Shane Mercer's on the show, Nick Depp's on the show, quite a few great talents on this show. Hooligan Championship Wrestling. Next week I have a show for House of Heat Pro Wrestling in Lafayette, Indiana. It'll be myself and Joe Dombrowski to do the commentary for that one. I have other stuff coming up in November. GCW returns to Louisville in November as well, so I'll definitely be at that show, plus so much more. You can follow me at Nick Maniwa on all social media. Mike, what you got going
on? Speaking of old stuff, recently uncovered a box of old customs from 2004-ish, coincidentally. Stuff that I had kept over the years and packed away to never be seen again, only to find that it still existed. And I think I talked to you a little bit about it, Nick. We want to bring these things back to the light of day and potentially get them into the hands of some of the people that they are renditions of. I don't know, whatever. Yes. Very cool. For me personally, I did a lot of these at my peak interest in wrestling, independent wrestling specifically, and a lot of crazy, weird names and big names in independent wrestling at the time. So that's a new project that will be happening soon if I can get off of my butt and take some pictures of old figures. I also have a stack of at least 20 that I have completed over the last couple months that I still have not taken pictures of and have customers kind of asking about, we'll say.
Right.
Most of them are WCW jobbers, which is my jam, and that's why I've been knocking them out and not taking pictures of them, because it's more fun to work on stuff than to take pictures of stuff. So that's my excuse. I got a bunch of stuff that I need to do that has been put off for quite a while. If you're interested in old figures, specifically customs, let's get in touch somehow, or if you know somebody who may be able to get us in the hands of someone who would be interested in an old figure of themselves, let's make that happen. We also have Midsouth Memories stickers that we got over the summer. I think we may have mentioned that happening before, but have not. If you would like a sticker, we'll give them, send them out for free for the first few. Drop us a line, and we will send you an envelope with a sticker inside that hopefully you will display proudly. They're pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. If you see me at an indie show, I definitely have Midsouth Memories stickers, the Papa Maniwa stickers. I have t-shirts again at Deathmatch Worldwide. If you go to deathmatchworldwide.com, go to the stores, and go down to N, you will see all the t-shirts that I have, plus the bestseller Just Bees Knees Death by Thickness shirt, which I also have as a sticker. So you can support in that way. Like I said, send your address to the midsouthmemories@gmail.com, and Mike will get you a Midsouth Memories podcast sticker. And I guess with that, for free. If you come to me at an indie show and they're on my table, they are not for free. So if you want one, you gotta go through Mike. I need my dollars.
I have envelopes and I have stamps ready to go. Let's use them. We want to get these things out there. We've also talked about investing in getting a new logo and stuff done, but in our show's infancy, we just want to get word out there and have people support and display and show off and carry their fun, expensive water bottles around with cool stickers that say my name on it. So that's the goal. It's a low goal right now. That's the goal. We're taking this thing as we can, and we're having extreme amounts of fun with it, as we promised each other we would. So there it is.
Once it stops being fun, then we ain't doing these no more.
We'll
and it's still fun.
More after it stops being fun, but the clock will be ticking at that point, and
if we get sponsored and someone pays us a lot of money, we'll do these until we die.
Yep.
But if that doesn't happen, there you have it, folks. TPI 04. Like I said, we have something in mind for next month already for October. I think everyone will be super pumped about that one once it drops. And
you keep checking back for some bonus episodes.
Yes, we have some secret drops coming soon too. We're gonna get this out first, and then we'll see where everything else falls. So we do have some stuff in the can. So make sure if you unsubscribe, you resubscribe, and if you didn't subscribe, you subscribe again, and you leave us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify and all that shit. And we will see you next month here at Midsouth Memories. That's all I gotta say. I'm out of here.